subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Satsuki Momoi and passed directly between Hanamiya Makoto and Sito Kintaro, and at the same time said, "Next time before picking prey, keep your eyes open, otherwise you won't know whether you are targeting the hunter or the prey." After saying that, Fang Jilai took Satsuki Momoi and walked away, leaving only Hanamiya Makoto and Sito Kintaro who were stunned in place. After Fang Jilai left, the aura of the apex predator slowly dissipated. Hanamiya Makoto and Sito Kintaro finally came to their senses and began to breathe heavily. Who? Huamong, what on earth is going on? Sito Kintaro turned around and asked Hanamiya Makoto. Even though his IQ is as high as 160, he still doesn't know what happened just now. Hanamung Jun's face turned pale. His face became very ugly, and his eyes flashed with anger. He did not answer Sito Kintaro's words because he kept repeating Fang Lai's last words in his mind. Before picking prey next time, keep your eyes open first, otherwise you won't know whether you are targeting a predator or a prey. Hanamiya Jun kept repeating this sentence in his mind, feeling that he was being looked down upon, and thought angrily in his heart. Is it a predator? Then I, Hanamung, really have to hunt and kill predators to see who is better, you or me. Thinking of this, Hanamiya calmed down his mood. After calming down for a long time, Hanamiya said, "Let's go, Kintaro." Sito Kintaro nodded and followed Hanamiya Makoto out of here. Fang Jilai held hands with Satsuki Momoi and continued walking on the street. Fang Jilai was thinking silently on the way. Have you stayed for too long? Why have I become so mediocre? Alai, who are they? Satsuki Momoi interrupted Fang Jilai's thinking and asked in a worried tone. She was a little afraid that the two people just now would retaliate against Fang Jilai in the future. If Fang Jilai knew what Satsuki Momoi was thinking, he would definitely laugh. Fang Jilai was not afraid of the revenge of the two, because even Tin Hanamung Jun cannot beat Fang Jilai in a head-on fight. After all, Fang Jilai was a boxer in his previous life. Coming here to beat junior high school students is just like playing. It's okay, just two geniuses. Satsuki Momoi tilted her head in confusion. This was the first time she heard the word genius from Fang Jilai. She didn't plan to ask too many questions because he knew that if Fang Jilai wanted to tell her, she didn't need to ask, and if Fang Jilai didn't want to tell her, she might not be able to tell her no matter how hard she asked. Satsuki Momoi is very sensible and will not dig into the details. She chuckled lightly and joked. I didn't expect that I could actually hear complimentary words from Alai's mouth. Fang Jilai turned to look at Satsuki Momoi and asked, Huh? I often praise others. Okay. Satsuki Momoi squinted his eyes and smiled. Really? Why didn't I know? Fang Jilai said unconvinced. Of course, I often praise others. Then you praise me and let me see. You're so beautiful. Satsuki Momoi raised the corners of her mouth happily, waiting for Fang Jilai's next words. However, after a long time, she found that Fang Jilai had not continued speaking, so she asked, "No more?" Fang Jilai nodded blankly. No more. Satsuki Momoi looked at Fang Jilai helplessly and complained in her heart. Alai really doesn't know how to praise people. Time passed quickly, and everyone in Teikō quickly finished the first few games of the preliminary round. Since the preliminary round is not very difficult, the biggest one is Fukuyama Junior High School. But for Teikō, Fukuyama is just a little bit stronger. In the next few games, Fang Jilai didn't even exert much force, and the opponent had already surrendered. The preliminary round soon left only the last two games. After the last two games were played, the next step was the national competition. This is the real competition. The preliminary round is just a means to filter out the competition teams. In Teikō Junior High School, after everyone in Teikō finished training, they were changing clothes in the locker room. While changing clothes, Akashi Sejiro said, "Today is the promotion test." Aomine Daiki didn't change his clothes. He was wearing a black vest and a white towel around his neck. He asked doubtfully, Is the promotion test today? Akashi Sidro took off his clothes and continued. Yes, it should be carried out in the 2nd and 3rd armies. There may be a few people promoted to the 1st army. King Feng Dehui stood up and said with a smile. That's it. That's great. Chapter 48, the meeting between Akashi and Kuroko. It's true that Alai went out with Satsuki after training. This guy, King Feng Dehui, said angrily. Haizaki Shogo didn't escape training today for some unknown reason, so he was also changing clothes in the locker room at this moment. He heard what Aomine Daiki said and said directly, "What does it have to do with you if someone hangs out with someone?" Aomine Daiki turned his head and stared at Haizaki Shogo and asked, "What did you say?" Haizaki Shogo changed his clothes, combed his clothes, and said, "Forget it if you didn't hear clearly." After saying that, he turned around and left the locker room. Aomine Dahui had an unhappy expression on his face and murmured, "This guy, although he is speaking for Alai, his tone really makes me angry." Akashi Sidro smiled softly and consoled him. "Come on, you still don't know his virtue after all this time. Except for classmate Jilai, he doesn't obey anyone and isn't afraid of anyone." King Feng Dehui took 2 deep breaths, calmed down his mood, and replied helplessly, "Yes, I don't know why. Except Alai, no one can control him." After saying that, Aomine Daiki stood up and walked out. When he walked to the door, he met Atsushi Murasakibara. Atsushi Murasakibara was eating sorbet and asked blankly, "Hey, Xiao King Feng, do you still want to train?" King Feng Dehui stopped and smiled. "Yes, I must defeat Alai." "Oh, come on," Atsushi Murasakibara replied lightly, then turned his head and saw Midorima Shintarō spraying something against the cabinet. "Hey, Midorima, what are you doing again?" Midorima Shintarō kept spraying deodorant on the cabinet and said, "I always feel a strange smell lately." "Ah, that." Atsushi Murasakibara took a bite of the sorbet and prepared to continue talking. At this moment, Aomine Daiki, who was next to Atsushi Murasakibara, suddenly broke out in cold sweat and quietly moved his steps outside. After Atsushi Murasakibara ate the sorbet, he said vaguely, because both Aomine-chan and Haizaki-chan piled unwashed t-shirts in the cabinet. Aomine Dahui immediately ran outside after hearing this. Midorima Shintarō turned his head angrily, saw Aomine Daiki running out from behind and roared, "Aomine!" Aomine Daiki ran towards the arena without looking back. After hearing Midorima Shintarō's roar, he laughed embarrassedly and shouted, "I won't do it next time." In the arena, King Feng Dehui was training hard when suddenly there was the sound of footsteps. Aomine Daiki turned his head and saw that it was Kuroko Tetsuya. He said hello happily. "Tetsuya, you're here." "You." After Aomine Daiki noticed Kuroko Tetsuya's depressed look, he hesitated to speak. "What's wrong with you?" "Aomine-san," Kuroko Tetsuya lowered his head, looking very depressed, and said, "I want to quit the basketball club." As soon as these words came out, Aomine Daiki was shocked and asked with an expression of disbelief on his face, "Why?" Kuroko Tetsuya shook his head and laughed at himself. "Sure enough, I'm not strong enough to play with Aomine-san. I'm not even strong enough to join the second team." Aomine Daiki stood there blankly, listening to Kuroko Tetsuya telling her situation. "I like basketball very much, but I have been in the club for so long and I haven't made any progress." "Sure enough, there is nothing you can do about something that doesn't suit you. What's more, I can never make much contribution to this Teikō middle school basketball club." Kuroko Tetsuya held his fist tightly, closed his eyes, and said with difficulty. King Feng Dehui remained silent for a long time before speaking. There is no such thing as a player who is not needed by the team. Even if he cannot play in the game, he is useless compared to the people in the First Army, and he was trained later than anyone else. I don't admit it. You make me admire you, and it's because of your training that you keep motivating me to keep practicing. I won't say that as long as you don't give up, you will definitely get it. But if you give up, you will get it. Nothing is gained. I don't want you to give up basketball." When Kuroko Tetsuya heard what Aomine Daiki said, her clenched fists relaxed slightly, and her inner thoughts began to waver. King Feng. At this time, Akashi Shijiro's voice suddenly came. Aomine Daiki looked up and saw Akashi Shijiro, Atsushi Murasakibara, and Midorima Shintarō walking towards him. Akashi Shijiro came over and said, "Are you training here?" Aomine Daiki replied, "Yes, there are too many people in the gym opposite, so I had to come here to train." Atsushi Murasakibara was eating something in his mouth and said vaguely, "Aomine-chan, you practice so hard by yourself." Aomine Daiki was stunned for a moment, then turned to look at Kuroko Tetsuya and said, "You're not alone." At this time, Akashi and Shijiro turned around and saw Kuroko Tetsuya, who had been standing there. After seeing Kuroko Tetsuya, Akashi Shijiro's expression was visibly surprised. "Ah, seriously? When did you stand here?" Atsushi Murasakibara also had a surprised expression on his face and said in a surprised tone. Akashi Shijiro looked at Kuroko Tetsuya, and something suddenly came to his mind. He asked Aomine Daiki, "King Fong, who is this?" Aomine Daiki walked up to Kuroko Tetsuya and introduced the three of them. "His name is Kuroko Tetsuya, and he is the person who has been training with me." Atsushi Murasakibara slowly spoke. "Have been training with Xiao Aomine? Then he must be very strong, but is there such a person in our department?" King Fong Dehue explained, "Because it's not from the First Army, it's just from the Third Army." After Atsushi Murasakibara heard that Kuroko Tetsuya was just Sanjun, he immediately lost interest, yawned and said, "What? It turns out to be just Sanjun. Let's go, Fong Zai's already found a restaurant." "Xiao King Fong, go change your clothes quickly. Fong Zai is waiting for us." King Fong Dehue was slightly startled and asked, "What are we going to do later?" Atsushi Murasakibara said slowly, "Fong Zai invited us to dinner. He has found a restaurant and is waiting for us to go there. Let's go." Akashi Shijiro stopped him. "Wait a minute, I'm a little interested in him." Midorima Shintarō was stunned for a moment, a little unbelievable that Akashi Shijiro would be interested in such a person. Akashi Shijiro walked up to Kuroko Tetsuya and said with a gentle smile, "It's really interesting. This is the first time I've seen this type. Maybe he has hidden talents that are completely different from ours." Chapter 49 Techniques for Using Sight Induction. Kuroko Tetsuya was slightly stunned. He knew who Akashi Shijiro was in front of him. If he could serve as Teik's vice captain, then he must be very powerful. Such a powerful person would actually say that he has different talents. But Kuroko Tetsuya himself doesn't know what hidden talents he has. Akashi Shijiro continued, "Midorima, you go ahead. I will talk to this classmate alone." Shintaro Midorima pushed his eyes, nodded, and walked out of the arena. Atsushi Murasakibara followed Shintaro Midorima's steps and walked out. After Aomine Daiki learned that they were going to have a dinner together, he also ran back to the dressing room to change clothes. At this time, Akashi Shijiro and Kuroko Tetsuya were the only ones left in the arena. Akashi Shijiro said to Kuroko Tetsuya, "Classmate, can you simply dribble the ball and shoot the basket?" Kuroko Tetsuya nodded, and then began to conduct the test according to what Akashi Shijiro said. After a long time, after Kuroko Tetsuya missed the basketball shot again, Akashi Shijiro finally couldn't help but sigh. "This is the first time I've seen someone who works so hard but has no results." After hearing this, Kuroko Tetsuya instantly turned to stone. "I'm sorry, I was really shocked when you said that." Akashi Shijiro raised his hand and explained quickly, "Sorry, I didn't mean to hit you. I just felt sad. Motor skills can't be called bad, and experience and training can also be called experienced. After all, someone who can train with King Fong cannot be too bad. But even so, I can't feel anything from you." As he spoke, Akashi Shijiro's tone became serious, and his expression began to become serious. This is extremely special. People who have been engaged in a certain sport for a long time will inadvertently reveal the unique temperament of experienced people. For example, Jilai, even when he is walking on the road, he can still exude a unique temperament. But your sense of existence is too weak, but this is not just a shortcoming, but your unique advantage. If you use it properly, it will definitely become a powerful weapon in the team. Kuroko Tetsuya listened to what Akashi Shijiro said and asked in disbelief, Is it really possible to take advantage of a weak sense of existence? Akashi Shijiro did not answer directly. He picked up the backpack on the ground and said, "Sorry, that's all I can say. If you find the answer, come to me." After saying that, Akashi Shijiro walked outside, leaving Kuroko Tetsuya alone in the arena to think. After Akashi Shijiro stepped out of the arena, Midorima Shintarō's voice suddenly sounded. "Is he the follow-up member you mentioned?" It turned out that Akashi Shijiro had discussed with Midorima Shintarō before. Akashi Shijiro felt that although the current team was very strong, the strength of the bench was still a bit weak. On the bench, Haizaki Shogo is considered strong, but Haizaki Shogo doesn't listen to anyone except Fang Jilai's orders. Even Coach Shirogane and Nijimura Shuzo can't control him. In the eyes of Akashi Shijiro, the strength of the bench is not strong at all, and there are very few substitutes who can keep up with their rhythm. Therefore, Akashi Shijiro wants to find a member of the tandem team. Firstly, to strengthen the bench, and secondly, so that the bench can keep up with the rhythm of the main selection. Akashi Shijiro found this possibility in Kuroko Tetsuya, so he said such words to Kuroko Tetsuya. Back to the present. When Akashi Shijiro found that Midorima Shintarō was still waiting for him, he was slightly stunned and asked, "Midorima, didn't you go to the restaurant with Murasakibara first?" Midorima Shintarō nodded and said, "I'm waiting for you to come together." Then the two of them started to walk out together. On the way, Midorima Shintarō asked, "Do you really think that guy's going to change?" Akashi Shijiro said coldly, "Who knows? I see possibility in him. It's just our first meeting, and we're not friends. I have no obligation to give him more advice." Midorima Shintarō seemed to feel something, and turned to look at Akashi Shijiro next to him, with a trace of surprise on his face. At this time, Akashi Shijiro, with a cold aura surrounding his body, continued to speak coldly. "I just put down the vertical line for him. As for whether he can climb up, it depends on him." At this time, Midorima Shintarō felt that Akashi Shijiro seemed to have changed. He had become very indifferent. Midorima Shintarō could no longer tell which one was Akashi Shijiro. When Kuroko Tetsuya was leaving school, he met Aomine Daiki, who was also leaving school after changing his clothes. The two of them walked out together. While walking together, Aomine Daiki asked Kuroko Tetsuya and Akashi Shijiro what they were talking about. Kuroko Tetsuya told Aomine Daiki what he and Akashi Shijiro were talking about. After listening, Aomine Daiki said, "You can talk about what you can do for the team." Kuroko Tetsuya nodded as he walked. "Yes, my shooting is very poor. I can only rely on passing or assists." Aomine Daiki walked beside Kuroko Tetsuya and said, "That's right. You're right. There must be something that only you can do." Kuroko Tetsuya looked at Aomine Daiki out of the corner of his eye and asked, "What do you mean?" Suddenly, Aomine Daiki drew a circle in the air with his hand and said, "For example, the kind of ball that can turn, the kind that turns with a whoosh dot." Kuroko Tetsuya shook his head speechlessly and said, "Forget it. I'd better find a way myself." King Feng Dahui laughed twice. "Don't worry. If it doesn't work, we can ask Alai. Alai will definitely explain it to you. Let's go find Alai together." After saying that, Aomine Daiki was ready to take Kuroko Tetsuya to Fang Jilai. But Kuroko Tetsuya shook his head and rejected Aomine Daiki's invitation. "Forget it, Aomine-san. This is your dinner party. I will feel rude if I go." Aomine Daiki stood there and thought for a while, and found that what Kuroko Tetsuya said seemed to be correct, so he had to give up. Aomine Daiki waved his hand to Kuroko Tetsuya and said, "Okay, then I'll leave first." Kuroko Tetsuya nodded, shook his hand at Aomine Daiki, and said, "Bye-bye, Aomine-san." After Aomine Daiki left, Kuroko Tetsuya walked into a bookstore alone, preparing to choose some books to study. Then Kuroko Tetsuya seemed to see something suddenly. His pupils dilated, and he looked at the name of the book. He stretched out his hand and took out the book, staring at the name of the book in his hand. Tips for using sight induction. Chapter 50, here we come. Shao King Feng, you came too slowly. Atsushi Murasakibara was sitting on a stool, with a hint of resentment in his tone. Since Aomine Daiki did not arrive, Fang Jilai did not allow Atsushi Murasakibara to eat first. "Sorry, I'm late." Aomine Daiki rushed into the restaurant and said breathlessly. Fang Jilai sat next to Satsuki Momoi and said with a smile, "It's not too late. Ajeng and the others have just arrived. Come here quickly." Aomine Daiki nodded, walked over, and sat next to Midorima Shintarō. After Atsushi Murasakibara saw Aomine Daiki taking his seat, he turned to look at Fang Jilai and asked, "Fang Zai, can you eat?" Fang Jilai nodded. "Since everyone is here, let's get started." "Very good." Atsushi Murasakibara suddenly became excited and began to sweep the food on the table. Fang Jilai watched this scene with a smile. Everyone happily ate together and talked about interesting things on the court. During the meal, Midorima Shintarō mentioned what happened tonight. "By the way, do you also know that person Jilai?" Fang Jilai ate the food, swallowed it, and asked, "Who is it?" Atsushi Murasakibara shouted about the food and said vaguely, "Is it the one from the three armies?" Midorima Shintarō nodded. As soon as Fang Jilai heard about the three armies, he immediately understood who Midorima Shintarō was talking about. It seems that as has already talked with Ajeng. Fang Jilai thought in his mind, nodded and asked, "You're talking about as I know him, what's wrong?" Akashi Shijiro explained softly, "It's nothing serious. I just had a conversation with him today. Whether he can change or not depends on himself." Fang Jilai nodded and said, "That's right. Fang Zai, I'm not full." Atsushi Murasakibara suddenly interrupted everyone's conversation and said to Fang Jilai. Fang Jilai smiled helplessly and called the waiter to add some more dishes. Because of Atsushi Murasakibara's interruption, everyone did not continue the next topic, but discussed other things and finished the meal together. After eating, Fang Jilai went home with Satsuki Momoi and Aomine Daiki, and everyone else returned to their homes. After sending Satsuki Momoi home safely, Fang Jilai also returned home. After opening the door and entering, I found my father talking to the other end of the phone. "Are you in a hurry? Can't you stay for a few more years?" "I understand, and I will save in." Seeing that his father was chatting enthusiastically on the phone, Fang Jilai did not interrupt him too much. He took off his clothes and walked into the bathroom to take a shower, then lay on the bed and prepared to rest and sleep. After Fang's father hung up the phone, he looked at Fang Jilai's room and sighed helplessly. 5 days passed quickly, and the follow-up competition of the preliminary round also arrived. Fang Jilai and others came to the competition venue one after another. Coming. It's Teikō. As expected of Teikō, his aura is too strong. Yes, the momentum is too terrifying. Goddess Fang, I want to give birth to a child for you. After several games, Fang Jilai and others have also gained a certain reputation. Everyone knows that Teikō has several abnormal first years, especially the 5 first years selected, who are even more powerful. Fang Jilai and others look calm. Having experienced the previous games, everyone was no longer nervous about this kind of scene. He walked into the locker room calmly, changed his clothes, and started to warm up. After the warm-up, Teikō is still the starting lineup of Atsushi Murasakibara, Aomine Daiki, Fang Jilai, Midorima Shintarō, and Akashi Shijiro. Because of his father's reasons, Honsuen Shozao spends most of his time with his father except for very important games. Therefore, Honsuen Shozan did not come to this game. But even without him, Teikō's 5 people were still crushing them with force, because the enemy was really too weak. The game had only passed 1.5 quarters, and the score had already been opened by more than 30 points, and the opponent's players also chose to give up the game and do return running training on the court. When the coach saw this, he directly dropped 5 players from Fang Jilai and replaced Haizaki Shogo and 4 substitutes. It's so boring. I can't seem to get interested in this kind of opponent. King Feng Dahui sat on the stool indifferently and shouted. Midorima Shintarō drank the water in his hand and reminded, "King Feng, don't be too proud and complacent." Yes. King Feng Dahui waved his hand and said perfunctorily. At this time, Aomine Daiki was not proud and complacent, but simply felt that his opponent was boring. Because of the fate of Fang Jilai and others, Haizaki Shogo got sufficient playing time in this game. He used his opponent's moves crazily, beating the opponent until his heart broke. The opponents chose to stand there and languish, and the game ended under this situation. Teikō led by a full 50 points, letting others understand that Teikō's substitute should not be underestimated. After this game is over, there is only the last game left in the preliminary round. The final game is 7 days later, as other teams evict teams that advance to the national tournament during these days. Teikō has locked up his spot early because he hasn't lost a game. Everyone in Teikō also resumed training. After spending 4 days like this, there were only 3 days left before the last game. In the Teikō basketball club, Fang Jilai was playing badly, and Akashi Shijiro stood on the other side of the court talking to others. Suddenly, a player from the First Army ran in and said, "Akashi, someone is looking for him." Then, a thin figure walked into the arena, and it was Kuroko Tetsuya. After Akashi Shijiro saw that the person looking for him was Kuroko Tetsuya, he smiled slightly and said, "We haven't seen each other for a week, Kuroko-san. Have you found the answer?" Kuroko Tetsuya nodded and said, "Yes, I got it." Akashi Shijiro said softly, "Then, let's test it." After saying that, Akashi Shijiro turned around and prepared for the test. Kuroko Tetsuya stopped him. "That, if possible, can it be tested through competition?" Akashi Shijiro stood there and thought for a while, then walked to Nijimura Shuzo, who was shooting the ball. "Nijimura-senpai." Nijimura Shuzo turned around in confusion. Akashi Shijiro looked at Kuroko Tetsuya and said to Nijimura Shuzo, "That is the person I was talking about before." Nijimura Shuzo followed Akashi Shijiro's gaze and said, "Oh, this is him you were talking about before." Fang Jilai heard the conversation between Akashi Shijiro and others. He stood up and walked to a few people. When he saw Kuroko Tetsuya outside the door, Fang Jilai was surprised, and then said with a smile, "Here we come, as." Chapter 51 joined the First Army. Hongsun was slightly startled and asked, "Do you know Jilai-san?" Fang Jilai nodded and said, "I know you. Then is there anything special about him? I heard Akashi Shijiro say before that he would surprise me." Hongsun said. Fang Jilai didn't answer, but he gave it a try and said, "Don't worry, Senior Nijimura, as will definitely surprise you." After hearing this, Nijimura Shuzo became interested in Kuroko Tetsuya outside the door. "Then I really want to take a closer look. Let's start testing." Akashi Shijiro interrupted, "Senior Nijimura, I think it could be tested through competition." Nijimura Shuzo touched his chin and thought for a while, then nodded and said, "Yes, I'll go talk to the coach." Hongsun Zaizu turned around and walked to the assistant teacher's side, saying something to the assistant teacher. Training is basically guarded by assistant coaches. Coach Platinum either stands on a high platform to watch or is dealing with other things. Generally, he rarely guards everyone's training. The coach listened to Nijimura Shuzo's words and turned slightly to look at Kuroko Tetsuya outside the door. After learning that Kuroko Tetsuya was recommended by Akashi Shijiro and knew Fang Jilai, he nodded and agreed to use the game for testing. This way, soon, the coach organized 2 teams and put Kuroko Tetsuya in for testing. At first, Kuroko Tetsuya did not perform well and had no sense of presence, which made the coach not interested at all. But then Kuroko Tetsuya said something to his teammates, and everything changed. The court started to get weird. As long as Kuroko Tetsuya was attacking, the basketball would always turn inexplicably and land accurately in the hands of the right person. The basketball's turn shocked everyone on the court, not just on the court. The coach and Nijimura Shuzo, who were watching from the sidelines, were also very shocked. This was the first time they had seen playing like this. He does not possess the ball at all, and does not even hold the basketball in his hands. He relies on his weak sense of presence to slap the basketball into the hands of his suitable teammates, even if the pass was inexplicable. What was even more strange was that Kuroko Tetsuya seemed to disappear on the court. It is precisely because of this ability that Kuroko Tetsuya becomes a special presence on the court. Hongsun Shiozao was very shocked and said in disbelief, Hey, what on earth is going on?" Akashi Shijiro opened his mouth and explained, "Induction, a method often used in magic, a means of inducing people's attention. For example, before passing the ball, through sight and movement, The marking player's eyes can be induced to the ball or the player. In this way, his presence, which is already weak, will disappear on the court like a dream. Nijimura Shizuo said, "Have you expected this kind of thing?" Akashi Sijiro smiled slightly. "No, I did better than I imagined." Beep. The game ended quickly and Kuroko Tetsuya's team emerged victorious. The coach, Fang Jilai, and others walked to the panting Kuroko Tetsuya, and the coach said, "Congratulations, you passed the test. I hope you work hard in the First Army." When Kuroko Tetsuya heard that he had entered the First Army, he raised the corners of his mouth happily and then nodded heavily. King Feng Dehoe and others also came to the stadium at this moment, came to Fang Jilai and others and asked, "What happened to Lai?" Fang Jilai pointed at Kuroko Tetsuya and said, "As has joined the First Army." Aomine Daiki turned around and saw Kuroko Tetsuya and said excitedly, "Really, as?" Kuroko Tetsuya nodded. Aomine Daiki smiled, even happier when he saw this. He was happy for Kuroko Tetsuya from the bottom of his heart, because only he knew how hard Kuroko Tetsuya worked and suffered in order to join the First Army. Atsushi Murasakura was eating potato chips, looked down at Kuroko Tetsuya, and said calmly, "Oh, you were the one that night." Midorima Shintarō pushed up his glasses and complained, "Murasakibara, no snacks at the training ground." Murasakibara replied nonchalantly, "I'm hungry." Haizaki Shogo finally walked into the court, chewing gum in his mouth, and walked to Fang Jilai's side and stayed still. After arriving at Fang Jilai's side, he took out a piece of chewing gum from his pocket and handed it to Fang Jilai and asked, "Want to eat?" Fang Jilai took the chewing gum, opened the package, and put it in his mouth. "Thank you." For some reason, Haizaki Shogo seemed to respect Fang Jilai very much since he was beaten that day. Fang Jilai didn't think it was because of the fight, because in the original work, Haizaki Shogo is not the kind of character who will change after being beaten once. Currently, Fang Jilai doesn't know what Haizaki Shogo is, but this is good. At least it won't cause trouble to Fang Jilai. Fang Jilai ate chewing gum, stretched out his hand to Kuroko Tetsuya, and said with a smile, "As, welcome to join the First Army." Kuroko Tetsuya had a smile on his face, stretched out his hand, and shook it with Fang Jilai, nodded and said, At this time, Akashi Sijiro, because of Fang Jilai's intervention, did not have the idea of only victory in his heart, so he did not say that only victory is his mission. Everyone received Kuroko Tetsuya happily, and Fang Jilai even proposed the idea of having a dinner party after school. For dinner parties, Aomine Daiki and Atsushi Murasakibara are 100% in favor of dinner parties, and Akashi Sijiro is not opposed to dinner parties with everyone. Midorima Shintarō believed in Fang Jilai because of his previous words, "I believe in you," so he would not refuse Fang Jilai's invitation. Haizaki Shogo never refuses Fang Jilai's request for some unknown reason. It's even simpler for Satsuki Momoi. How could she refuse her boyfriend's invitation? In this way, Fang Jilai and others went straight to the nearby barbecue restaurant after training. After entering the store, I lit up the barbecue and celebrated Kuroko Tetsuya's joining. Kuroko Tetsuya felt everyone taking care of him, and his eyes turned red for the first time. This was a friendship other than him and Ojihara Shigehiro, and he cherished this friendship very much. Everyone ate the barbecue and talked to Kuroko Tetsuya about interesting things in the past while eating. Kuroko Tetsuya listened to everyone's words with a smile on her face. He would not interrupt rashly, but just feel the enthusiasm of everyone towards him. After finishing the meal and saying hello to Atsushi Murasakibara, Akashi Sijiro, and Midorima Shintarō, Kuroko Tetsuya turned around and went home with Fang Jilai and others. Aomine Daiki walked on the road and said to Kuroko Tetsuya, "As, you may play in the next game, so you have to be well prepared." Kuroko Tetsuya nodded firmly. "Aomine-san, I can do it." Chapter 52, Kuroko's first match. Soon, the last game of the preliminary round arrived. Teikō versus Nanhara. Hongsu and Shiozao led Fang Jilai and others into the stadium. Kuroko Tetsuya in the team was very nervous, and his whole body was trembling slightly. Kuroko Don't be nervous, just relax. Akashi Shijiro noticed Kuriko's discomfort and comforted him. Kuroko, Tetsuya nodded blankly, but the tension did not ease because of Akashi Shijiro's words. Fang Jilai looked at Kuroko Tetsuya with his peripheral vision and said to the assistant, "Coach, let us start." The assistant teacher thought for a while, then nodded. "Well, I understand." After everyone in Teikō changed their clothes, they walked into the stadium together. The arena was already full at this time, because this was the last game of the preliminary round. Although they already knew that Teikō would definitely win this last game, the audience still wanted to see Teikō's last game. Contest. Here we come, Teikō. Maybe Teikō might win a championship this year. I don't know. After all, there's still many strong people in other schools. I'm already kind of looking forward to Teikō in a national competition. Kuroko Tetsuya stepped into the stadium and looked at the crowds of spectators above. He was already nervous and became even more nervous now. He even walked a little shaky. But at this time, what the coach said made him extremely nervous. "Kuroko-kun, you start the game instead of Jilai." Upon hearing this, Kuroko Tetsuya suddenly broke out in cold sweat, and his whole body became visibly restrained. After the warm-up, both teams started playing. Everyone in Nanyuan saw that Teikō only had 4 people on board, and they all had puzzled expressions on their faces. Nanyuan's captain even raised his hand to signal to the referee. "Referee, Teikō only has 4 people on the bench. Can't Fang Jilai be on the bench?" Nanyuan glanced at Fang Jilai fearfully from the corner of his eye. It was obvious that Fang Jilai's strength made them feel scared. The audience outside the venue also raised questions because they only saw 4 people. "Yes, won't Fang Jilai come?" "Hey, won't Mr. Fang come on stage? I'm here specifically for Mr. Fang." "What do you mean? Teikō only F'd 4 people." Only then did the referee pay attention to Teikō's players, and after confirming, he said, "Yes, classmates. Why are there only 4 of you here?" Akashi Shijiro smiled gently and said, "Referee, there are 5 of us." As soon as these words came out, everyone in Nanyuan and the referee were stunned. They clearly saw only 4 people. Kuroko Tetsuya raised his hand tremblingly, stuttering a little because he was so nervous. I'm here." Everyone in Nanyuan followed the sound, and after seeing Kuroko Tetsuya clearly, everyone in Nanyuan said in surprise, Hey, when was he on the field?" "I don't know. I didn't see him at all. By the way, he can actually replace Fang Jilai as the starter." Not only everyone in Nanyuan was confused, but also the audience. Has that person always been there? Why don't I remember him at all? I don't know. Why should he replace our male idol in the starting lineup? By the way, can he really play basketball? Everyone was talking and noisy. The referee was shocked for a moment and then came to his senses, gathered everyone together, and after a friendly greeting before the game, started playing jump balls. While preparing to jump the ball, Aomine Daiki turned to comfort Kuroko Tetsuya as, "Don't be nervous, it's just." Aomine Daiki, who was still talking, turned around and saw Kuroko Tetsuya's appearance and couldn't help but vomited. "It's over. It's as unsteady as a newborn deer." It turned out that Kuroko Tetsuya was a little unsteady even when standing because of her nervousness. The referee threw the basketball high. Minamahara jumped up hard, but still couldn't win a jump ball from Atsushi Murasakibara. The basketball was successfully photographed by Atsushi Murasakibara into the hands of Akashi Shijiro. Akashi Shijiro dribbled the ball through the half and said comfortingly, "Don't be nervous, Kuroko-kun. Take your time." Before Akashi Shijiro finished speaking, there was a bang from behind. Akashi Shijiro looked back and saw that Kuroko Tetsuya had fallen to the ground. Everyone in Teikō was stunned on the spot, a little dazed. Kuroko Tetsuya stood up again and said, "Sorry, I stumbled a bit. It's okay." That being said, the nosebleeds from Kuroko Tetsuya's nose indicate that there is something wrong with him. Akashi Shijiro shook his head and said, No matter how you look at it, you don't seem to have any problems." With no other choice, the assistant coach had to call a timeout to let Kuroko Tetsuya off the field to stop the nosebleed. Atsushi Murasakibara complained, "It's unbelievable." Aomine murmured with a worried expression on his face. As Midorima Shintarō looked at Kuroko Tetsuya and said, I didn't expect to be substituted in just 1 second. Akashi Shijiro replied helplessly. This was really unexpected. The assistant coach had no choice but to say to Fang Jilai, there is no other way, Jilai, come on. Fang Jilai shook his head. Against an opponent like Nan Yuan, Fang Jilai felt there was no need to play. Coach, let Haizaki play first, and then change after she has stopped the bleeding. The assistant coach nodded and said to Haizaki Shogo, then Haizaki comes on. Because of Fang Jilai, Haizaki Shogo did not miss any game and even basically did not miss training. Haizaki Shogo nodded, licked his lips, and stood up. The game restarts. Teik has the ball. There is no doubt that the game has completely entered Teik's rhythm. Atsushi Murasakibara's attack on the basket, Aomine Daiki's tearing defense, Haizaki Shogo's snatching goal, Midorima Shintarō's precise three-pointer, Akashi Shijiro's passing assist. Nan Yuan was completely unable to resist, and the score of the game was completely one-sided. Sure enough, it's impossible for Nan Yuan to compete with Teik. Teik is too strong. No one could stop him. The audience marveled at Teik's power. The coach was almost tired watching the game, and he said to Kuroko Tetsuya, Kuroko-kun, has the nosebleed stopped? Kuroko Tetsuya nodded and said, it's stopped. The assistant coach said, that's good. You will replace Haizaki later. Kuroko Tetsuya nodded and prepared to continue playing. After the basketball went out of bounds, Teik also made a substitution, with Kuroko Tetsuya replacing Haizaki Shogo, because when off the court, Fang Jilai gave Kuroko Tetsuya a lot of guidance, which made Kuroko Tetsuya less nervous. He stepped onto the court firmly and was ready to make his contribution to the team. Chapter 53 as Wake Up. Kuroko Tetsuya walked onto the court and the crowd started talking. That person is playing again? What on earth was Teik thinking that such a weak person could actually become an army? Yeah, I really don't understand why such a person is an army. Not necessarily. What if someone else is very strong? Let's take a look first. The game resumes with Teik in possession. After Akashi Shijiro dribbled the ball across half-court, he passed the basketball to Kuroko Tetsuya, who was unguarded. The person guarding Akashi Shijiro was slightly startled and thought to himself, did you make a mistake? There's obviously no one there. The audience was also very puzzled and said one after another, did you make a mistake? There's obviously no one there. Akashi made a mistake? It's very rare. Hey, wait a minute. Why did the ball turn? On the court, everyone thought Akashi Shijiro made a mistake, but the basketball suddenly turned a corner and flew straight in the direction of Atsushi Murasakibara. Nan Yuan point guard looked surprised and murmured, why did the ball turn? Atsushi Murasakibara ran in the direction of Kuroko Tetsuya's pass and stretched out his hand to use the basketball, but the basketball flew out from under his arm. Beep. Out of bounds. Namwon has the ball. The referee blew his whistle and shouted. Atsushi Murasakibara angrily put his hand on Kuroko Tetsuya's head and said, I said, what happened to that shot you just made? Are you kidding me? Kuroko Tetsuya said seriously, I'm not kidding you. I'll crush you. Please don't crush me. In fact, need you to pieces is just Atsushi Murasakibara's catchphrase. He is not really angry, but has a bit of a complaining tone. In the next few goals, Kuroko Tetsuya's passes continued to make mistakes, and the ball always had to be delayed to reach the hands of everyone in Teik. Shintaro Midorima looked up at Kuroko Tetsuya and thought to himself, I see. I probably understand his style of play, but he made too many mistakes. Fang Jilai looked at the situation on the court quietly, and then turned to look at the assistant coach. At this time, the assistant coach was staring at the game on the court with a serious expression. Fang Jilai knew that the coach had already had the idea of expelling Kuroko Tetsuya from the first team. Coach, what do you think? The assistant teacher thought for a moment, then said after a moment, there were too many mistakes. Fang Jilai opened his mouth and explained, Coach, one game can't say anything, as just hasn't adapted to the rhythm of the first army. Once he adapts, he will contribute to the team. The coach did not reply, but fell into deep thought. After a moment, he nodded and said, I understand, classmate Jilai. After seeing his coach nodding, Fang Jilai knew that Kuroko Tetsuya would not be asked to withdraw from the team, and Aomine Daiki tried his best to prevent it. Fang Jilai looked deeply at Kuroko Tetsuya. Aja, you have to thank me very much. Beep. At the end of the first half, Teikō led Nanyuan by 28 points 58-30. Everyone also returned to the locker room. In the locker room, Fang Jilai said, as Kuroko Tetsuya raised his head and looked a little frustrated because he didn't make much contribution to the team in the first half. Fang Jilai saw that Kuroko Tetsuya was very frustrated. He patted Kuroko Tetsuya on the shoulder and said, as Ijuin is very fast, you need to correct your passing speed. If you don't take action quickly, it will be too late. Your main problem now is timing. Also, you must control your sense of existence so that the induction technique can work. To do this, you have to control your emotions and don't express them in words. You must have fighting spirit, but you must keep it in your heart. Work hard in the second half of the game, as I will always support you. Kuroko Tetsuya was deeply touched by Fang Jilai's words. He took a deep breath, his eyes became firm, and he nodded and said, I understand, Jilai. I will work hard in the second half. Fang Jilai raised his lips and nodded. Wake up, as the second half of the game begins. Teak ball possession. Akashi Shijiro heard what Fang Jilai and Kuroko Tetsuya said. He felt from the bottom of his heart that Fang Jilai was very powerful, and he immediately found the problem with Kuroko Tetsuya. Even Akashi Shijiro didn't find out how to solve Kuroko Tetsuya's problem, but Fang Jilai saw it at a glance. Jilai is indeed very powerful. Akashi Shijiro sighed inwardly and then passed the basketball out. Everyone in Nanyuan looked in the direction of the basketball and found that there was no one in the direction of the ball. They all thought the ball would go out of bounds, so they relaxed their vigilance. Sudden snap. In an instant, the basketball suddenly turned and fell straight into the hands of Shintaro Midorima. Midorima Shintarō had a shocked expression on his face. The ball unexpectedly turned towards me. Shocked. Shooting is unambiguous. Midorima Shintarō quickly jumped up and hit a three-pointer. Brush. 3 points are valid. After the basketball was made, Midorima Shintarō still didn't recover. He looked at his hands, and then at Kuroko Tetsuya's position. Is it because of him? Akashi Shijiro came over and patted Midorima Shintarō on the shoulder and said, Concentrate on Midorima. The next game will be interesting. Midorima Shintarō pushed up his glasses with his fingers. His expression became serious again. He nodded and said, I see. In the subsequent games, everyone discovered that as long as Teik attacks, the basketball will turn inexplicably, and it will be strangely passed to the hands of Atsushi Murasakibara, Aomine Daiki, and Midorima Shintarō. The inexplicable turning made everyone in Nanyuan have no idea how to defend, and they didn't know who to defend because the basketball didn't know where it would turn. This resulted in Nanyuan being like a headless chicken in subsequent games, not knowing how to defend at all. The entire defensive system was completely torn apart, and the scores were getting bigger and bigger. In the end, Teik won with a terrifying score of 104-50. Teik thus qualified for the national competition. King Feng Dahui jumped up excitedly and said with a grin, We have entered the national competition. Ha! Akashi Shijiro smiled and responded, Yes, thanks to everyone's help. Nijimura Shizuo said, You guys are really amazing. I didn't even take any action. Atsushi Murasakibara returned to his lazy state after the game and said, What shall we eat later? Midorima Shintarō complained helplessly. Murasakibara, can you stop thinking about eating every day? Atsushi Murasakibara tilted his head and asked, If I don't eat, what will I eat? Midorima Shintarō also had nothing to do with Atsushi Murasakibara, so he said no more. Aomine Daiki hugged Kuroko Tetsuya's neck and praised, By the way, you played a big role in the game just now as Chapter 54 Mingxing Middle School. Atsushi Murasakibara praised, Yeah, little Kuriko's pass was quite unexpected. Kuroko Tetsuya smiled and said, That's what I should do. Okay, let's go back to school and clean up. Let's go have a big dinner. Fang Jilai laughed and said, As soon as Atsushi Murasakibara heard about the feast, his eyes lit up and he kept nodding. Yeah, let's have a big dinner. I want to eat barbecue. Fangzi. Yes, Alai, let's go have barbecue. Aomine Daiki said excitedly. After hearing this, Fang Jilai began to ask other people for their opinions. Everyone, how about some barbecue? Akashi Sejiro said gently. I have no objection. Midorima Shintarō pushed up his glasses and said, I don't have any objection either. Haizaki Shogo nodded and had no objection. After Fang Jilai made sure that everyone had no objections, he turned to look at Hongtsuin Shiozao. Senior Hongtsuin, you can't be absent today. I've invited you several times in a row, but you haven't come. Hongtsuin Shiozao was slightly startled and stood there with a difficult expression. Classmate Jilai, I might not be able to go. Fang Jilai looked stunned, and then he remembered that Hongtsuin Shiozao's father was seriously ill at this time. Maybe after this national competition, Hongtsuin Shiozao would go to the United States to accompany his father for medical treatment. Maybe it was for this reason that he stopped playing basketball later. Fang Jilai had no choice but to give up the idea of inviting Hongtsuin to build the building. Okay, Senior Hongtsuin, let's make an appointment next time. After having dinner with the other people in Teikō, everyone returned to their homes. In the afternoon, the coach announced that Kuroko Tetsuya had officially entered the main selection and became the 8th member of the team. After having dinner with others, Kuroko Tetsuya took out her mobile phone and shared the joy with her childhood friend on her way home. Fa Shao on the opposite side is also happy for Kuroko Tetsuya. Other side, after Fang Jilai opened the door and went home, he saw his father sitting in the living room watching TV. Dad, don't you have work today? Father Fang chuckled and said, There is no work, but you did. Did you in the game? Fang Jilai waved his hand speechlessly. You still don't believe in my strength? No, just asking normally, huh? Fang Jilai looked at his father speechlessly. He knew that his father had always been this virtuous. By the way, Dad, can I ask you something? Father Fang put away his smile. Generally speaking, if Fang Jilai asked himself a question, it would definitely be an unsolvable problem. You asked, Dad, do we have hospital assets in this beautiful country? Father Fang looked stunned and asked, Is your friend sick? Fang Jilai nodded. From a moment Hongtsuin Shiozao refused to have dinner together, Fang Jilai had been thinking about this matter. He understood Hongtsuin Shiozao's character very well. Even if he sent Hongtsuin Shiozao's father to the beautiful country and arranged for professional people to take care of him, Hongtsuin Shiozao will still go to beautiful country with his father. So Fang Jilai cannot prevent Hongtsuin Shiozao from leaving. Because there is no technology in Japan that can treat Shizo Nijimura's father, we can't tell Shizo Nijimura to give up his father and stay and continue playing, right? Since we can't leave Hongtsuin Shiozao behind, we should at least let Hongtsuin Shiozao live a better life in the beautiful country, right? Father Fang saw his son nodding and said, Yes, I have invested in several large hospitals in the beautiful country before. If you have any needs, just tell me. Fang Jilai nodded and said with a smile, Thank you very much, Dad. After saying that, Fang Jilai went to take a bath. Father Fang looked at his son's back, his eyes shining with peace. This brat. In the following time, everyone in Teikō resumed normal training. Except for Fang Jilai, everyone else seriously completed the training plan designated by Platinum Genzo. Haizaki Shogo is no exception and has also completed the training plan. Time passed quickly, and in a blink of an eye, it was time for the national competition, where schools from all over the country came to compete for this championship trophy. Teikō's team faced a not very strong team in their first game, and they won without a doubt, winning by more than 40 points. Won the first victory in the national competition. There were no surprises in the second game, a victory of more than 30 points. In the third game, Teikō faced Maisei Junior High School, which had the villain Hanamiya Makoto and Seto Kintaro. Are they so dirty? Aomine Daiki took the report Satsuki Momoi gave to everyone and said angrily. Everyone in Teikō gathered around, their expressions a bit stern, their eyes fixed on the data sheet in Aomine Daiki's hand. The data table shows that the two teams that played against Mingxiang had 3 to 4 players injured and left the field. It can be said to be a very scary injury data. This is Hanamiya's style. He likes to hurt others maliciously to win the game. Nijimura Shizuo said from the side. His expression was very serious, and his tone was full of true disgust for Hanamiya. Because just last year, Hanamiya Jun not only used a flagrant foul on Nijimura Shizuo, but also completely injured several Teikō players. What a bad character. Midorima Shintarō pushed up his glasses with his fingers, his tone filled with anger. Akashi Sidro looked cold and said nothing. Fang Jilai looked calm because he already had a way to deal with it. Platinum Jinzo walked up to everyone and said, "Okay, be careful in the next game and don't get hurt. Go home, have a good rest, and concentrate on the next game." Shirogane Kozo said with a serious tone, because he knew that if everyone did not concentrate on the next game, it might be regarded as a flagrant foul and cause injuries. The current referees in Sakura Country are not very professional. Sometimes players conceal themselves and commit fouls, and the referees hardly notice them. It's finally started. Teikō Middle School plays against Meiching Middle School. I'm already looking forward to it. I'm a little worried. I heard that Mingxing Middle School's basketball is not very clean. Indeed, Teikō was injured by 2 people last year. I wonder what will happen this year. As long as my boyfriend Fang doesn't get hurt, by the way. Since Mingxiang was so dirty, why didn't he be disqualified from the competition? I don't know either. Chapter 55 Sneak Attack. The stadium is packed because everyone wants to see the competition between Teikō and Akichang. Whether Teikō will continue their winning streak or be stopped by Akichang. These are what everyone is looking forward to. Contestants from both schools entered the venue one after another. When the Mingxiang players entered the stadium, there was almost no audience cheering for them. It was completely silent until Hanamiya actually appeared, and only a few girl shouts appeared in the audience. But it was different when Teikō appeared. As soon as Teikō appeared, the audience cheered in unison. "Teikō, come on. Goddess Fang is #1. Teikō Grand Champion." The contrast between the two teams is very obvious. "Tisish, I really don't know what to cheer about," Mingxing's small forward said disdainfully, with a jealous expression on his face. Huamong Zhen stared in Fang Jilai's direction with a sinister look on his face. "Come and see who is the hunter." Everyone in Teikō began to warm up after entering the venue. Shintaro Midorima sat on a stool, placed a water glass beside the stool, bent down, and started tying his shoelaces. Midorima Shintarō has a habit of tying his shoelaces first. Even as he was tying his shoelaces, Mingxing's small forward seemed to be still in a state of jealousy. He kicked the basketball that fell at his feet in the direction of Midorima Shintarō, but no one saw this scene. Because everyone focused on the warm-up, no one noticed Mingxing's small movements. Midorima Shintarō felt something was wrong, turned his head, and saw a basketball flying towards him quickly. Midorima Shintarō quickly stood up and dodged, but the cup was knocked away by the basketball and hit Midorima Shintarō. Midorima Shintarō subconsciously raised his hand to block the cup, but the impact of the cup still hit Midorima Shintarō's hand. Moreover, after the cup fell to the ground and broke into pieces, the fragments bounced up and scratched Midorima Shintarō's left index finger, causing blood to flow from the finger immediately. Everyone's eyes turned towards Midorima Shintarō's position. "Shintarō, what's wrong with you?" Fang Jilai quickly ran to Midorima Shintarō and asked. When he found that Midorima Shintarō looked ugly and his left index finger was bleeding, Fang Jilai quickly shouted, "Paramedics!" Midorima Shintarō's face was very ugly. He valued his fingers very much because they were his weapons. Now that the weapons were injured, he would naturally be unable to play in this game. What Shintaro Midorima is concerned about is not the wound on his left index finger, but the impact of the cup. Because of the impact of the cup, Shintaro Midorima has already found that his left hand is slightly weak. Damn it, how could this happen? Midorima Shintarō gritted his teeth, and the injury to his left hand was very fatal to him. Midorima. Others rushed to Midorima Shintarō's side to observe the state of Midorima Shintarō. Akashi Sidro looked at Midorima Shintarō and kept covering his left hand, as if he had discovered something, and said, "Midorima, your left hand." Midorima Shintarō nodded with difficulty. I can't use my left hand right now. Maybe. King Fang Lai was stunned for a moment and murmured, "How could?" Then Aomine Daiki turned his head sharply and stared at Mingqing's small forward, his eyes full of anger. Mingqing, a small forward, spread his hands and pretended not to know anything and said, "I don't know." The ball flew over accidentally. If you want to blame it, just blame your teammate for bringing the cup. After all, he wouldn't be injured without the cup. You guy! Aomine Daiki roared angrily, and then he was ready to rush forward and beat Mingqing's small forward. Fang Jilai quickly grabbed him. "Ada, calm down. Don't be impulsive now." King Fang Daiki turned his head angrily and shouted, "Why are you telling me to calm down?" Fang Jilai quickly pulled King Fang Daiki over and said in a low voice, "Don't fall for the trap. His purpose is to make you angry. If you attack him, your qualification for the competition will be canceled, and his purpose will be achieved." King Fang Daiki's anger remained unabated, and he said angrily, "But I can't bear this breath." Fang Jilai nodded and said, "I can't bear it either." King Fang Daiki, "Then you still." Fang Jilai's tone became calmer. "But I won't take action now." King Fang Daiki was stunned. "What do you mean?" Fang Jilai's tone became gloomy, and his whole temperament also changed, exuding an aura of indifference. The ball is played on the court, but not necessarily off the court. King Fang Daiki shivered all over and said with some hesitation, "You mean?" Fang Jilai nodded, then let go of King Fang Daiki, turned around and shouted, "Haizaki, I'll be alive later." Haizaki Shogo was stunned at first, looked at Mingqing's small forward, and then looked at Fang Jilai's sinister eyes, and instantly understood something. He smiled evilly and licked his lips. "I know, Lai Ge." King Fang Daiki also understood what Fang Jilai meant and temporarily suppressed the anger in his heart. "Alai, I'm with you." Fang Jilai smiled and said, "Let's all go back to the team." Akashi Sejiro has been paying attention to Fang Jilai and others. He knew what Fang Jilai and others were thinking, but he did not reveal it. Baijin Gingzhou also knew what Fang Jilai and others were thinking, but he did not speak. Instead, he pretended not to know anything. He turned to Hongtsuan Shiozao and said, "Hongtsuan." Nijimura Shizo heard his coach calling him, turned around and asked, "What's wrong, coach?" Shirogane Genzo said, "After the game, don't go home yet. Follow Fang Jilai and the others. If something goes wrong, remember to take action and don't let them get hurt." Injured? Nijimura Shizo looked confused. Was he injured after the game? But he soon realized it. These juniors are a bit interesting. "I know the coach, and I guarantee that Jilai and the others will not be injured at all." Shirogane Genzo nodded calmly. "That's good. If you get injured, your training volume will be doubled." Nijimura Shizo suddenly exclaimed, "Ah, coach, what should I do if I get injured?" "Are you injured? If you're injured, you should consider your own reasons and have you work hard." Stop, coach. I was wrong. I shouldn't talk too much." Shirogane Genzo raised the corners of his mouth slightly. "That's good. That's all. Let's warm up." "Yes." As the medical staff brought Midorima Shintarō back to the lounge for bandage, everyone in Teikō was holding their breath and quickly warmed up. There is no way. The game has not even started yet. One's own main force has been taken off the field by the opponent's malicious injury. No matter who you are, everyone will be angry. Fang Jilai looked at the referee's position, walked forward and said, "Chapter 56, I have buff bonus referee Yamada." The referee heard someone calling him and turned his head in the direction of the sound in confusion. The referee was obviously stunned when he saw it was Teikō's player. "Classmate, you know me?" Fang Jilai laughed and praised loudly. "Of course, Judge Yamada is a very fair referee. I will always remember you." Yamada was slightly startled. This was the first time a player said he knew him. In the past, not only could the arena not recognize his name, they couldn't even remember his face. And during the game, they often complained about their whistleblowing skills. "What's wrong, Yamada?" Another referee thought something had happened and came over to ask. Yamada shook his head and said, "Nothing, just chatting with this player for a while." "Chat? With the players?" Another referee looked at Fang Jilai carefully, with doubts on his expression. This was the first time he saw a player come in to chat with the referee. Fang Jilai said with a smile, "Yes, Referee Kaioshin, I'm just here to have a chat." As soon as these words came out, Yamada became even more confused. He pointed at Kyu-shan and asked, "Do you still know Kyu-shan?" Kyu-shan was also confused. He couldn't remember any interaction between him and Fang Jilai. Fang Jilai always had a smile on his face and spoke gently. "Yes, of course I know each other because both of them are very fair referees, and they are brothers in private. To be honest, I envy your brotherhood. If possible, I would even invite them to dinner." Kyu-shan and Yamada looked at each other. This was the first time that a player called out their names, and they also knew their relationship. What does this mean? It means that this player must have paid attention to the two of them, otherwise he would not understand their relationship so well. Since this player knows them so well, the words coming out of the player's mouth must come from a heart. Therefore, after the two heard Fang Jilai say that they were very fair referees, a feeling of recognition burst out from their hearts. In the past, they were either scolded by the players or the players' coaches. This sudden recognition made the two feel very happy. Kyu-shan and Yamada both had smiles on their faces and said at the same time, "That, little brother, your name is..." Fang Jilai said slowly, "I am Fang Jilai. You could just call me Lai." Kyu-shan murmured softly, "Fang Jilai? Surnamed Fang? Wait, could it be?" Kyu-shan suddenly turned his head and looked at Yamada. When he saw Yamada also had a surprised expression, he immediately understood something. Kyu-shan and Yamada quickly smiled and said a little embarrassedly, "Fang yes. Bah, Lai. Are you also a Teik player?" Fang Jilai nodded and said with some confusion, "Yes, I am Teik starter. What are you?" Yamada and Kyu-shan's smiles never stopped. They looked at each other and said quickly, "Don't worry, Lai. I will make sure this game is fair and just, and I guarantee you'll be satisfied." Yamada patted his chest and assured. Kyu-shan on the side was no exception, and quickly promised, Lai, you can fight boldly. I also know the reputation of Mingxing Middle School. Don't worry, I will work hard today, and I promise not to let you get hurt." Not to be outdone, Yamada continued, "Me too. In fact, the referees in Sakura country competitions are not very professional. They're all trying to make a living, and Sakura country's rules are also flawed in some places. Therefore, even if it is not a particularly important game, the referees will not take the referees very seriously. This resulted in many small moves of the players being invisible to the referee, and Hanamiya took advantage of this, which is why there were so many injured players during the game. It stands to reason that when these things happen, wouldn't the referees take it more seriously? In fact, this is not the case. The general thinking among referees is that their salary is only a little, so why should they take it too seriously? What does it have to do with me if your player is injured? I don't know you, so why should a stranger increase Taiga's workload? What's more, not only do these players not know the referee, but they often insult the referee, which makes the referee less willing to take the call seriously. But now a person appeared, Fang Jilai, for some unspeakable reasons, and Fang Jilai not only knew the two referees Yamada and Kyu-shan, but also had an in-depth understanding of them. This led to a change in the mood of the two. They decided to keep an eye on Fang Jilai. As long as Mingxing's players fouled Fang Jilai, the two of them would immediately blow the whistle. Beep, both sides gather. Yamada blew the whistle and asked members of the two teams to stand face-to-face on the midline for pre-match friendship. "Please give me your advice." Everyone on both sides greeted each other. Mingxing's small forward looked at the Teik crowd with an evil smile, with mockery in his eyes. When Aomine Daiki saw this look, his anger suddenly rose again. A hand suddenly held him down. "Ada, calm down and we'll talk about it after the game." King Feng Dahui calmed down and said, "I understand." Huamong Jun looked at Fang Jilai with a sinister look on his face, not knowing what he was thinking. After greeting each other, both sides stood in their respective positions and prepared to jump the ball. Since Midorima Shintarō was injured in his left hand and was unable to attend the game, the shooting guard was taken by Aomine Daiki, point guard Akashi Sejiro, small forward Fang Jilai, power forward Nijimura Shizo, and center Atsushi Murasakibara. Yamada walked to the midline with the basketball and glanced sideways at Fang Jilai. "Don't worry, Mr. Fang. I will protect your safety." Call. The basketball was thrown into the air by Yamada. Atsushi Murasakibara and Seto Kintaro took off at the same time, and the basketball was undoubtedly pointed to their own backcourt by Atsushi Murasakibara. When Yamada threw the ball, Fang Jilai took the lead and rushed toward the opponent's frontcourt. After Akashi Sejiro received the basketball from Atsushi Murasakibara, he made a long pass and accurately passed the basketball to Fang Jilai's hands. Fang Jilai touched the basketball, took 2 quick steps, jumped up, and slammed the basketball into the basket. Collapse. Team Teik took the lead with 2 points. Teik, 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 Teik. The audience kept shouting the word Teik, as if cheering for the overlord. Transition of possession. Hanamiya took the ball through the half, looked at Akashi Sejiro with dark eyes, licked his lips, and quickly broke through to the right. Akashi Sejiro quickly followed up and stretched out his hand to interfere with the dribbling. Seeing Akashi Sejiro stretch out his hand, Hanamiya Makoto raised an evil smile on his face, quickly moved the basketball to his left hand with his right hand, and then swung his free right hand outwards, hitting Akashi Sejiro's outstretched hand. Akashi Sejiro's expression changed, and his movements froze for a moment. Chapter 57 Small Moves. Hanamiya Jun seized the opportunity to break through Akashi Sejiro and score a jumper. The score was 2-2. Fang Jilai looked at Akashi Sejiro's state and asked quickly, "Ajing, are you okay?" Akashi Sejiro shook his head and said, "It's okay." Seeing this, Fang Jilai breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Switch defense to Ajing. I have a buff bonus." The 2 referees did not notice Hanamiya's little move just now, because most of their attention was focused on Fang Jilai. Akashi Sejiro nodded and agreed to Fang Jilai's request for a defense change. Transition of possession. The 2 switched on the defensive end, but there was no exchange on the offensive end, so the point guard is still Akashi Sejiro. Akashi Sejiro brought the basketball across half the court and passed it to Fang Jilai. Fang Jilai grinned after catching the ball, looked at the small forward Mingsheng with a playful look, and said, "I'll make you regret it." Mingsheng, a small forward, was stunned for a moment, and then said fiercely, "Then come on." Fang Jilai's expression changed after hearing this. His whole temperament changed, and he exuded a cold aura. Fang Jilai turned his back to Mingsheng, small forward, and then started to play from behind. Collapse. 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 Mingsheng, small forward, gritted his teeth and tried to resist Fang Jilai's back hit, but his resistance was very weak in front of Fang Jilai. Little by little, Fang Jilai was forcefully hit inside. Seeing this, Seto Kintaro quickly came back to defend. Mingsheng's small forward looked very ugly at this time, and he felt a little out of breath. After Fang Jilai hit the inside, he jumped up suddenly, turned half a circle in the air, and held the ball in both hands to prepare for a dunk. Small forward Mingsheng and Seto Kintaro quickly jumped up to intercept, but they failed to stop Fang Jilai and were dunked to the ground by Fang Jilai. Beep! At the same time, the referee's whistle sounded. Mingsheng no. 8. The thug fouled, 2 points are valid, and 1 free throw is added. Yamada had been paying attention to Fang Jilai, and when he saw Mingsheng and the 2 approaching Fang Jilai, his spirit began to become tense. After discovering that Mingsheng's small forward's hand touched Fang Jilai's hand, he quickly whistled in his mouth. Kyushan reluctantly let go of his whistle. "Damn it, Yamada beat me to it, no? I have to blow first next time." After Fang Jilai dunked the ball, he landed directly on the chest of small forward Mingsheng. Mingsheng's small forward suddenly screamed, "Ah, what are you doing?" Mingsheng power forward quickly rushed towards Fang Jilai and pushed him away. King Feng Dahui immediately couldn't help but rushed forward, and Fang Jilai caught him in time. "Calm down, Ada, this is not the time." Beep, beep, beep. Seeing the opportunity coming, Kyushan whistled quickly. Mingsheng no. 23. Technical foul. Mingsheng's power forward suddenly froze on the spot, turned his head, and said angrily, "How can you boast about riding a horse?" Seeing that power forward Mingsheng still had a temper, Kyushan immediately prepared to call another technical foul and send him home. But Hanamiya Jun quickly stopped him. Referee, he is a bit ignorant. I apologize to you here. Kyushan's anger was obviously not gone yet. He shook off Hanamiya Jun, who was holding him, and prepared a whistle. Elder brother. Fang Jilai shouted quickly. Kyushan turned to look at Fang Jilai in confusion. Fang Jilai shook his head at him, and then Kyushan put down his whistle. Fang Jilai was relieved when he saw this. If Kyushan was defeated by Mingqing's power forward, how would Fang Jilai play? How would he take revenge? Fang Jilai didn't want them to end so early. Fang Jilai wanted to put them into fear. Don't you like to play dirty? Fang Jilai is full of tricks, and if you play dirty, you'll be criticized, but Fang Jilai won't. Fang Jilai now has a buff bonus. It can be said that in the current field, Fang Jilai is the rule itself. After discovering that the referee was not planning to pursue a penalty, Hanamiya breathed a sigh of relief, walked up to the power forward Mingqing, and said fiercely, "Don't be stupid." Mingqing power forward nodded quickly. I understand. Fang Jilai made free throws, and after hitting the technical foul free throw and the thug foul free throw, the score came to 6-2. Mingqing has the ball. Hanamiya took the ball through the half and passed the basketball to Sito Kintaro. Sito Kintaro turned his back to Atsushi Murasakibara and then smiled sinisterly. Sito Kintaro stepped on Atsushi Murasakibara's right foot with his right foot and then hooked the basketball into the basket. Atsushi Murasakibara could only watch the basketball enter the basket because his right foot was stepped on. After the ball scored, Sito Kintaro let go of his feet and ran back. Atsushi Murasakibara murmured with an angry expression on his face, "Crush you." After saying this, Atsushi Murasakibara's whole temperament changed, and the air around him became hot. Akashi Sidro noticed this and passed the ball to Atsushi Murasakibara in the next possession. Atsushi Murasakibara was not used to it. He pushed Sito Kintaro away with a back shot and then dunked. Sito Kintaro rubbed his chest and murmured, "Speaking of which, it really hurts." Hanamung Jun said from the side, "It doesn't matter, just destroy it." Transition of possession. Hanamiya Makoto slowly dribbled the ball to half court because he wanted to give Sito Kintaro time to get into position. Sito Kintaro wanted a block, but found that he was not as strong as Atsushi Murasakibara, so he winked at the power forward. After receiving the message, the power forward quickly ran over and stood behind Atsushi Murasakibara to block him. The two of them blocked Atsushi Murasakibara. After Atsushi Murasakibara was surrounded by two people, he was about to get out again, but then he found that his knee was pushed. Power forward Akikanari sneaked a knee into the back of Atsushi Murasakibara's knee. The sudden collision caused Atsushi Murasakibara's legs to lose strength instantly, and he almost fell to his knees. Hanamiya Makoto seized the opportunity and passed to Sito Kintaro. After Sito Kintaro received the ball, he prepared to shoot, and Nijimura Shizo quickly made up the defense. Sito Kintaro had no expression on his face. He didn't shoot, but passed the basketball to power forward Akinari. Power forward Akinari stepped on Atsushi Murasakibara's foot and put the basketball into the basket. Atsushi Murasakibara once again watched the ball go into the basket. Atsushi Murasakibara clenched his fists angrily. Fang Jilai saw this and stepped forward to comfort him. "Adin, we will take you one tonight." Atsushi Murasakibara obviously did not understand what Fang Jilai meant and asked angrily, "What?" Fang Jilai whispered to Atsushi Murasakibara about the plan for the evening. After Atsushi Murasakibara heard this, his anger gradually disappeared, and he slowly said, "Then Fangzi, you must call me." Fang Jilai nodded and chuckled. "Don't worry, I'll have to work hard for you later. By the way, be gentle." Atsushi Murasakibara nodded and said, "I understand, Fangzi." Chapter 58, are you ready? Good night. Sweet dreams. Transition of possession. After Akashi Sidro dribbled the ball through the half, he began to observe the position of his teammates. Aomine Daiki was stuck in position by Mingqing's shooting guard. And while he was stuck, Mingqing's shooting guard continued to use small moves against Aomine Daiki. Small forward Mingqing also used small moves against Jilai, but then he was dumbfounded, because Fang Jilai also used small movements to continuously hit his calf, and the force was several times his, he was already a little unable to withstand it. Bang! Ming Chang's small forward fell to his knees, and Fang Jilai pushed him to the ground. He raised his head with an ugly expression and looked into Fang Jilai's cold eyes. A feeling of being stared at by a wild beast suddenly filled his brain. He felt that he was not facing a human, but a man-eating beast. His body began to tremble slightly, and his lips began to tremble uncontrollably. Fang Jilai stared at him and uttered a word silently. No one else knew what Fang Jilai said, but Ming Chang, a small forward, understood it. He read Fang Jilai's lips. What Fang Jilai said was, "It's just begun." Hanamiya looked towards Fang Jilai, then looked at the referee, and found that the referee had no intention of stopping the game. Hanamiya said, "Cut," and then passed the basketball to the shooting guard. After the news was passed out, Hanamiya Makoto began to run quickly to the inside, with Akashi Shijiro following closely behind him. With a wicked smile on his face, shooting guard Amy stepped on Aomine Daiki's right foot to block Aomine Daiki behind him and caught the ball from Hanamiya Makoto. King Feng Dehui looked ugly and suppressed the anger in his heart. This guy, shooting guard Akiching, made no other moves and quickly passed the ball to Sito Kintaro after receiving the ball. After Sito Kintaro caught the ball, he moved his right elbow back and hit Atsushi Murasakibara's waist. Atsushi Murasakibara felt a sudden pain in his waist and then took a step back. Upon seeing this, Sito Kintaro immediately turned around and scored the ball with a hook. Neither Yamada nor Kyu Shan saw these, because their attention was not on the ball, but on Fang Jilai. Atsushi Murasakibara's eyes were burning with fire as he stared at Sito Kintaro's back. In the following game, Ming Chang continued to use small moves to interfere with everyone in Teikō, but when the small forward Ming Chang interfered with Fang Jilai, the referee blew the whistle directly. When Fang Jilai attacked Ming Chang's small forward with a small move, the referee was as blind as a whistle. In fact, Fang Jilai directly used his shoulder to attack Ming Chang's small forward again, knocking Ming Chang's small forward away. But the referee still did not make any penalty. Instead, he called the small forward Ming Chang a blocking foul, which made the small forward Ming Chang very uncomfortable. Beep. Teikō's signals pause. More than half of the first quarter passed, and Shirogane Jinzo called a timeout. The score now reached 17-9, with Teikō leading by 8 points. Everyone in Teikō returned to the benches to rest. Aomine Daiki took the water handed by the substitute player, took a sip, and said angrily, "Damn it, how can anyone play like this?" Atsushi Murasakibara was also very angry, because Atsushi Murasakibara stood inside to grab rebounds and receive the most small moves. Nijimura Shizo took a sip of water, with a trace of anger in his eyes. This is their virtue. I experienced it deeply last year. Akashi Shijiro looked cold and said nothing. Fang Jilai sat next to Akashi Shijiro and said, "Ajeng." Akashi Shijiro turned his head and looked at Fang Jilai. He seemed to understand what Fang Jilai was thinking and nodded and stopped talking. Seeing this, Fang Jilai smiled slightly, then turned to Bai Jin Gingzhou and said, "Coach, let Haizaki come on and replace Zhang." Bai Jin Gingzhou and Fang Jilai looked at each other, understood Fang Jilai's thoughts, nodded and said, "Well, then Jilai will be the point guard, and Haizaki-san will take Jilai's position." Haizaki Shogo covered his neck, shook his head twice, and said, "Yes, coach." Platinum Jinzo drank tea and said calmly to everyone, "Pay attention to safety, and by the way, be gentle." Haizaki Shogo licked his lips, smiled evilly, and nodded. Ming Chang on the other side, "Coach, I don't want to face that devil anymore." The small forward Ming Chang said with a horrified look on his face that he was already frightened by Fang Jilai's beating. Only about halfway through the first quarter, he already felt that his left hand was a little unruly. Moreover, the referee was obviously blind. Fang Jilai tried to persuade him to refuse to call the referee, but he fought back and was directly called for a foul. In such a short period of time, small forward Michung has already been fouled 4 times. If he fouls again, he will leave the field directly. The coach was a little hesitant about whether he should replace the small forward. Suddenly, Huamongjin came out, shook his head, and said, "No." Ming Chung, a small forward, had a breakdown. He roared, "Why? Hanamiya." "What?" Hanamiya said. "How many more chances do you have to foul?" Ming Chung, a small forward, was slightly sluggish. Once, but I really don't want to face that devil anymore. As long as I make the smallest move, I will be called for a foul. Hanamiya Jun said viciously at this moment. "Who said I want you to use small tricks?" Ming Chung, a small forward, was stunned and said, "Huamong, it's not you." "Chill." Hanamiya Jun raised a finger to his mouth, signaling the small forward Ming Chung to silence. "I want you to make good use of this foul, preferably." Hanamiya Jun suddenly paused, glanced in Teik's direction, and continued. "It's best to destroy him directly." The small forward Ming Chung was stunned for a few seconds. Then his expression became very ferocious, and he gritted his teeth and said, "I see." At this moment, Ming Chung's small forward's anger was mixed with his unwillingness to be targeted many times, and all came together to form hatred. The game starts again. As soon as he came on the court, Fang Jilai noticed something was wrong with the way Ming Chung, a small forward, looked at him. The small forward Ming Chung looked at him with undisguised hatred, and Fang Jilai grinned when he saw this. It seems the lesson is not enough. Teik ball possession. Fang Jilai dribbled across half-court. Hanamiya Jun defended Fang Jilai with a calm expression and glanced at Akashi Sijiro, who was sitting in the audience. "Has that red hair gone? What a pity." Fang Jilai was not interested in him at the moment and signaled Haizaki Shogo to come over for a pick and roll. Haizaki Shogo quickly stepped forward to block Hanamiya, and Fang Jilai dribbled to the left and faced Ming Chung's small forward again. The small forward Ming Chung gritted his teeth and stared at Fang Jilai, with hatred radiating from his eyes without any concealment. Fang Jilai stared at the small forward Ming Chung, raised the corners of his mouth slightly, and asked, "Are you ready?" Chapter 59 Counterattack. Anyone who betrays his sincerity should be cut to pieces with 1,000 swords. "What?" Ming Chung's small forward exclaimed. The next second, small forward Ming Chung felt as if he was hit by a truck and flew out. It turned out that just after Fang Jilai finished speaking, he started attacking from the right, but there was something different about Fang Jilai's attack. Fang Jilai engaged in a physical confrontation with Ming Chung's small forward and directly knocked Ming Chung's small forward away. With no one inside, Fang Jilai quickly combined the ball and prepared to take off for a dunk. Ming Chung, a small forward who was knocked aside, looked ferocious as he quickly rushed towards Fang Jilai, and then his whole body hung on Fang Jilai's body. Huh? What's going on? No. Ming Chung's small forward thought he could pull Fang Jilai down and destroy Fang Jilai. But when Ming Chung's small forward really hung on Fang Jilai, he found that Fang Jilai was only slightly affected. The impact was that Fang Jilai changed from a dunk to a layup. I thought it was over, but Fang Jilai suddenly lost his balance and fell backward, lying flat and falling from the air. Don't forget, behind Fang Jilai is Ming Chung's small forward. You like to be dirty, right? Bye-bye. Fang Jilai raised the corner of his mouth, fell back from lying on his back to lying on his side, and quickly raised his elbow, aiming directly at the face of the small forward. Boom! The sound of falling to the ground was heard, and then the screams of small forward Ming Chung were heard. Beep! Yamada quickly whistled to ask for a pause in the game. Everyone rushed to Fang Jilai's position. Alai, it's okay. King Feng Dahouei and others ran to Fang Jilai and asked. Atsushi Murasakibara and Haizaki Shogo stretched out their hands and pulled Fang Jilai up. Fang Jilai held their hands and smiled slightly. I'm fine, but the one below me may not be. Aomine Daiki and others looked at the young forward Ming Chung, who was lying on the ground, covering his face and screaming in confusion. I saw Ming Chung, a small forward, covering his face tightly at this moment, blood flowing out from his fingers and screaming in agony. Ming Chung's team and coach also came to the court. The coach gently took away Ming Chung's small forward's hands and looked at the injury. The moment he saw the injury, Coach Ming Chung showed a shocked expression on his face, and then turned to question Fang Jilai. Is there anyone who can play like this? Akashi Shijiro ran over and saw the injury of the small forward Mingsheng. After seeing the injury, his pupils shrank instantly and a shocked expression appeared on his face. Everyone in Teikō looked over following the voice, and then all showed surprised expressions. No one else, because at this moment, Mingsheng, a small forward, had a big hole in the corner of his right eye, and blood was constantly flowing out of it. His entire face was filled with blood, and he looked like a bloody man. Facing Coach Mingsheng's accusation, Fang Jilai calmly showed his hands and treated the other person with his own medicine, and replied in the same tone as Mingsheng's small forward, "Please, he committed a flagrant foul on me. I just accidentally lost my balance. If he hadn't fouled me, would he have been injured? The only one to blame is that he wanted to foul me." Coach Mingsheng pointed at Fang Jilai angrily. You are simply arrogant. I think you are the one using strong words. We all saw it. He fouled Alai maliciously. He deserves what he is doing now. Aomine Daiki interrupted. Akashi Shijiro nodded and said, Aomine is right. He is responsible for everything. Atsushi Murasakibara agreed. Yes, Akazai is right. Hongsuin Shiozao stood up and said, We haven't held you accountable yet, so you're going to hold us accountable first? Coach Mingsheng stood up angrily, pointed at everyone in Teikō, and said, You. Before Coach Mingsheng finished speaking, Haizaki Shogo stood in front of him with an evil smile on his face and asked, GGG, do we have any problems? Coach Mingsheng looked at Haizaki Shogo. After feeling the dangerous aura emanating from Haizaki Shogo, he took a few steps back. He turned to look at his students and found that Hanamiya Makoto and Sito Kintaro were standing far away, observing silently, with no intention of stepping forward to help. Coach Mingsheng asked angrily, Huamong, are you just... But before he finished speaking, he saw Hua Gong waving his hands and saying with a smile, Coach, we always hate people who commit flagrant fouls, even if they are our teammates. Then Hanamiya turned to look at the Mingsheng team members behind him and asked, Do you think so? Sito Kintaro was the first to nod. That's right. The other Mingsheng players did not speak immediately, but hesitated. However, when they saw Hanamiya's eyes, they immediately nodded and replied, Yes, we hate this kind of player the most. Coach Mingsheng felt that his heart was not good at this moment. He stretched out his hand and pointed tremblingly at Hanamiya and others, unable to even say a complete sentence. There was no other way, so Coach Mingsheng had no choice but to turn around and complain to referee Yamada. Referee, look at Teikō's players. Why are such players still around without being sent off? Yamada nodded indifferently. I almost forgot if you didn't tell me. Then Yamada blew his whistle. Coach Mingsheng thought Yamada was going to send Fang Jilai off the court. So he looked at Fang Jilai with a proud expression on his face, as if he was showing off. But he soon became disappointed because he saw that Fang Jilai not only showed no panic, but also showed a strange smile. Dazzled by anger, he reacted instantly. The accident was obviously caused by a malicious foul by small forward Mingsheng. The referee would not be able to send Fang Jilai off in any case. Instead, he might. He turned to look at Yamada in horror, and then Yamada's words confirmed his thoughts. Because Yamada has already said that he will expel Mingsheng as a small forward. Coach Mingsheng stood there blankly, because he knew that the matter might not be over yet. Kyushan came out at this time, blew the whistle, and gave Coach Mingsheng a technical foul. At this moment, Coach Mingsheng was stunned. He stood quietly on the court, as if he had been abandoned. At this moment, he felt that he was the loneliest existence on the court. The medical staff quickly took Mingsheng, a small forward, for treatment, while Coach Mingsheng sat on the bench sluggishly. Hanamiya glanced at Coach Mingsheng and cursed secretly. Idiot. Then he turned his head and looked at Fang Jilai with an ugly expression. Hanamiya has noticed something is wrong, because the referee of this game seems to have opened his eyes. Chapter 60, Give Me Everyone Else. Although the referee opened the heavenly eye, it seems that this heavenly eye only exists on Fang Jilai and not on the other people in Teikō. When he knew that he couldn't hurt Fang Jilai, Hanamiya's expression turned extremely ugly, but there was nothing he could do about it because the referee in this game was too outrageous. Hanamiya, who wanted to understand this, took a deep breath, turned his head, and said in a deep voice to the team members, "No more fouls on Fang Jilai." Everyone in Mingcheng exclaimed, not knowing why, but they did not dare to put forward any opinions and could only play according to Wamong's true wishes. Of all the people, only Sito Kintaro knew why, because he also noticed the referee's strangeness. Hanamon didn't pay attention to everyone's emotions, gritted his teeth, and slowly spit out a few words. Except for him, everyone else, "Give me." Everyone in Mingqing nodded to express their understanding. The game restarts, and Ming has the ball. Hanamon looked at the last minute of the first quarter, and his side was already 11 points behind. Hanamiya really knew that he could only shoot 3-pointers in this attack, so he led the opponent Jilai behind the half-court. Hanamon Jun made continuous tentative steps to try to mobilize Fang Jilai's focus. But Fang Jilai did not falter at all. Hanamiya made a cut sound and then passed the basketball to the shooting guard. There was no way Hanamonzan couldn't break through Fang Jilai's defense, and there was no way to use small moves because just now, when Hanamonzan faced Fang Jilai, he glanced at the two referees with his peripheral vision. He found that when he just started dribbling, the two referees were already staring at him, and their whistles were already in their mouths. Hanamiya really had a hunch that he might be called for a foul if he broke through and used the ball protector. Hua Gongjin looked extremely ugly, staring at Fang Jilai resentfully, feeling very confused in his heart. "What exactly did you do?" The shooting guard faced Aomine Daiki after receiving the ball. Aomine Daiki looked serious and half-crouched to defend the shooting guard. Ming Chang's shooting guard turned his head slightly, looked at Hanamiya Makoto, and waited for Hanamiya Makoto's eyes to indicate. Hanamiya immediately glanced at the two referees and found that the referee's eyes were almost still on him. So Hanamiya nodded and winked to the shooting guard. The shooting guard Mingqing took the hint and started attacking. Mingqing's shooting guard did not drop the ball immediately to break through. Instead, he slapped the ball with his right hand and kept exploring forward with his left foot. Aomine Daiki didn't move at first, but then Aomine Daiki discovered that the shooting guard Mingqing was testing his feet. So Aomine Daiki moved a little bit, and that was it. Mingqing's shooting guard quickly broke through. Aomine Daiki reacted and quickly caught up, but then Mingqing's shooting guard's left hand suddenly flicked to the side. Aomine Dahui quickly evaded. Because he avoided the attack, Aomine Daiki's movement was a beat slower, allowing Mingqing's shooting guard to break through and enter the inside. King Feng Dahui's face was full of anger, and he quickly chased after him to make up for his defense. "Damn guy." After Hanamiya saw this, he gave Sito Kintaro a wink. Sito Kintaro understood the situation and ran out from the inside. Atsushi Murasakibara originally wanted to keep up, but Mingqing's shooting guard had already rushed in. There was no other way, so Atsushi Murasakibara had to make up the defense. Sito Kintaro smoothly ran to Fang Jilai's side and then made a pick-and-roll action. After Sito Kintaro was in position, Hanamiya Jun quickly rushed from the left. After Mingqing shooting guard Hanamiya Jun ran out of the open space, he passed the basketball. Hanamiya caught the ball in a vacuum, curled his lips slightly, and then threw the basketball. Fang Jilai quickly passed by Sito Kintaro after a pick-and-roll, but when he went around, Sito Kintaro's feet moved slightly. This move caused Fang Jilai to stumble slightly, causing Fang Jilai to be a little slower in his defense. He could only witness Hanamon really throwing the basketball. Brush. 3 points are valid. The score was 20-12. Fang Jilai didn't pay attention because Sito Kintaro's movements just now were very subtle and his steps were very small. If Fang Jilai had circled a little wider, he wouldn't have been tripped. However, Fang Jilai almost moved close to Sito Kintaro in order to quickly cover up the defense. Sito Kintaro also took advantage of this and made such a move that deceived the two referees. To be honest, Fang Jilai couldn't even tell whether it was intentional or accidental. Fang Jilai sighed slightly, looked at Sito Kintaro's back and murmured, "What a talent." There was still more than 30 seconds left on the clock, and Fang Jilai quickly rushed over after receiving the ball. A change of direction broke through Hanamiya Makoto, and then face Sito Kintaro's defense. Fang Jilai knocked Sito Kintaro away with a physical confrontation. After knocking it away, Fang Jilai gently picked the basketball and put into the basket. There is still 28 seconds left in the game, and this is Fang Jilai's preparation in order to leave the final score for his side. Hanamiya really knows Fang Jilai's thoughts. At this time, the last shot is Teik's ball anyway, unless he misses the shot intentionally and Sito Kintaro grabs the rebound in the end, but this possibility is almost very small. Because at this moment, Atsushi Murasakibara was completely angry and kept physically colliding with Sito Kintaro. Sito Kintaro's strength is definitely not comparable to Atsushi Murasakibara's. It is a bit difficult to resist Atsushi Murasakibara's strength, let alone step on Atsushi Murasakibara's feet to grab rebounds. So Hanamiya really gave up this idea and decided to prolong the attack a little longer to shorten the time for Teik's final attack. Hanamiya Jun controlled the ball and stood 2 steps away from the three-point line, waiting for the time to pass. Finally, when the attack time was only 8 seconds, Hanamiya winked at the players. Sito Kintaro and the shooting guard immediately ran over and stood on Fang Jilai's right side. Hanamiya broke through immediately. Fang Jilai knew that there were 2 people on his right side in the pick and roll, so he gave up the pursuit and waited for Aomine Daiki and Atsushi Murasakibara to cover up. King Fong Dahue wanted to rush over, but suddenly a pulling force came over him. Aomine Daiki turned around and found that the shooting guard was grabbing his clothes at the moment. However, this action only lasted a short time. When Aomine Daiki turned his head, Ming Chang's shooting guard let go of his hand. He used Sito Kintaro and Fang Jilai to block the referee's view. The referee's attention was always on Fang Jilai and Sito Kintaro, so he ignored him. King Fong Dahue remembered Fang Jilai's words, so King Fong Dahue suppressed his anger in his heart and saw Hanamiya Jun rushing to the inside. Chapter 61. If I can't destroy you, I will destroy your teammates. Atsushi Murasakibara stood under the basket, opening his hands to stop Hanamiya Makoto. Hanamiya Makoto did not choose a layup when facing Atsushi Murasakibara, but chose to use a floater to score the goal. Atsushi Murasakibara jumped high and wanted to block the shot, but because the arc was too high, Atsushi Murasakibara couldn't touch the basketball at all. Brush. 2 copies are valid. The score was 20-14. There are 8 seconds left before the end of the first quarter. Atsushi Murasakibara serves to Fang Jilai. Fang Jilai dribbled the ball through the half with 3 seconds left on the clock. Fang Jilai moved. Without any hesitation, he shifted into third gear and began to rush towards the basket. Huamong really opened his arms and tried to defend Fang Jilai, but it was all in vain, because Fang Jilai is too fast. Fang Jilai was like a cheetah, quickly tearing apart Mingqing's defense. After breaking into the penalty area, he poured the basketball into the basket through Sito Kintaro. Collapse. The basket rack was shaking constantly, as if it had endured a huge bombardment. Sito Kintaro quickly backed away and finally lost his balance and fell to the ground. Weird monster. Sito Kintaro's eyes widened, and he looked at Fang Jilai, hanging on the basket with a hint of fear. Sito Kintaro had tried his best just now, but he still couldn't stop Fang Jilai's power. Beat. The referee blew the whistle to end the first quarter. The score was 22-14, with Teik leading by 8 points. Everyone on both sides returned to the bench to rest. The spectators outside the stadium were discussing the match just now. It's so strong, did you see it? Our male god Fang broke through right away. I saw my sisters. Goddess Fang is so awesome. It's a pity that Midorima didn't play. I quite like watching him shoot 3-pointers. Speaking of which, Chung Chung is really quite capable. He was only behind by 8 points in the first quarter. TCH, don't look at the fact that we are only 8 points behind now, but we will definitely be behind even more in the future. What else can they do besides playing dirty? Inside the venue, everyone in Teik drank water to replenish their strength. Damn it, don't they know how to play without using dirty methods? Aomine Daiki cursed angrily. In the first quarter, he didn't know how many times he was stepped on and pushed. Now Aomine Daiki is like a volcano, ready to erupt at any moment. Fang Jilai reminded, duh, hold back until you can vent your anger after the game. King Feng Doe squeezed a water bottle in his hand vigorously, and then sighed. I understand, Alai. Haizaki Shogo sat next to Fang Jilai, licked his lips, and was already looking forward to the battle after the game. Atsushi Murasabura took out the potato chips, opened them, and said seriously while eating, I feel annoyed too. Fangzi, you have to leave one for me. Fang Jilai laughed loudly and said, Don't worry, Aden, you must be involved. Nijimura Shuzao raised his forehead. When did these juniors become crooked? After secretly complaining, Nijimura Shuzo continued, Hey, please be more careful later. I feel like they may be more aggressive later on. Fang Jilai and others nodded. Akashi Sidro interjected. Speaking of Alai, I found that the referee seems to have a special whistle on you. The others in Teikō were attracted by Akashi Sidro's words. Aomine Daiki said, Yes, Alai, why is the referee paying so much attention to you? Fang Jilai looked at everyone's expectant eyes, laughed, and said, I have a buff bonus. Platinum Jinzo interrupted everyone's conversation at this time. All right, in the second half, Nijimura is off and Akashi is on. Aomine will replace the power forward, Jilai will replace the shooting guard, and Akashi will replace the point guard. Be safe. Everyone in Teikō nodded. Mingqing Middle School on the other side. After Hanamiya came off the field, he angrily grabbed the water bottle given by the substitute player and poured it into his mouth. After drinking, anger appeared on his face, and he felt very unconvinced. Dum. What the hell are these two referees? Is Fang Jilai your father? You are so concerned. Because of the referee's excessive attention, Hanamiya had no way to use small moves on Fang Jilai, which made him very angry. His purpose in this game was to destroy Fang Jilai. But now, except for one green man who was crippled, everyone else is fine. On the other hand, on his own side, not only the small forward suffered a cracked elbow, but the coach was also left in a broken mood. But there is no way to do this. Who is calling Coach Mingqing too stupid? Hanamiya really doesn't want this coach a long time ago. Hanamiya Jun grabbed the tactical board next to the coach and began to say to everyone in Mingqiang, We were like this in the second half. Like this. Hanamiya Jun kept talking about tactics. After talking about tactics, his expression turned ferocious, and he said in a deep voice, Finally, remember, if I can destroy them, then I will destroy them. Everyone in Mingqing nodded and then walked back to the field. The second quarter begins. Everyone in Teikō stood up and walked to the field. Hanamiya Jun saw that Akashi Sidro was among the people on the stage, and his angry expression softened slightly. It's been replaced, so don't blame me. Mingqiang has the ball. Hanamiya Jun dribbled the ball across half court and faced Akashi Sidro's defense. Hanamiya Jun did not attack immediately. He looked at the eyes of the two referees. It was found that the two referees' eyes were basically not on him, but on the substitute small forward defending Fang Jilai. I will call him a small forward in the future. You just need to know that the one who hurt the person has been carried down. Hanamiya Jun showed an expression that was indeed true. He now understood that the two referees in this game took great care of Jilai for some unknown reason. If this is the case, it is almost impossible for Fang Jilai to be injured in this scene. Unless he attacks directly, it is impossible for Fang Jilai to receive any damage. Thinking of this, Hanamiya's mentality suddenly became unbalanced. Why is this happening? Hanamiya's anger welled up in his heart, and his eyes were fixed on Akashi Sidro in front of him. Since I can't get rid of you, then I will get rid of your teammates. Hanamiya Makoto suddenly started to speed up, made a big change of direction, and broke through Akashi Sidro's left side. Akashi Sidro quickly followed up without losing his position. At the same time, Akashi Sidro stretched out his hand to steal the ball. Hanamiya noticed Akashi Sidro's movements. He looked ferocious and roared in his heart. This is the moment I've been waiting for. Hanamiya Jin suddenly raised his left hand and swung it fiercely at Akashi Sidro's outstretched hand. Go to hell. Chapter 62, Injured Akashi Sidro, seemed to notice Hanamiya's movement and quickly retracted his hand. Hanamiya Jun's pupils shrank slightly, a little unbelievable. Escaped? In fact, it was not the case. Akashi Shijiro's movement to stop his hand was still a little slow, and his finger was hit by Hanamiya Makoto. Akashi Shijiro felt the pain coming from his fingers, his expression changed, and his defensive movements were slightly stunned. Hanamiya broke through quickly and won the ball with a throw. The score was 22-16. After scoring the goal, Hanamiya Makoto did not celebrate. Instead, he turned to look at Akashi Shijiro with an ugly expression. He walked up to Akashi Shijiro and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, "You're lucky. It won't be so easy next time." Akashi Shijiro's eyes narrowed, and he said, "If you play like this, even if you win, will you be happy? Do you really love basketball?" The current Akashi Shijiro has not yet gone dark, and his love for basketball is not lost to anyone. So he does not understand Hanamiya Makoto's method of playing. Hanamiya was suddenly stunned. His eyes were downcast. He lowered his head and said in frustration, "Of course I like playing ball." Seeing this scene, Akashi Shijiro asked with some confusion, "Then why did you use such dirty methods?" Hanamiya lowered his head, tears slipped from his eyes, and his frustrated tone came out again. "There is no way. If I don't do that, I won't be able to enter the national competition. I won't be able to defeat those powerful players." Opponent. Having said this, Hanamiya suddenly grabbed his jersey, tightened it unwillingly, and continued in a choked tone, "I promised everyone that I would win a national competition." Akashi Shijiro thought that Hanamiya was really having troubles, and just when he wanted to comfort him, he saw Hanamiya suddenly burst into laughter. "Ha ha ha ha!" Hanamiya raised his head, stuck out his tongue, and stared at Akashi Shijiro with a playful expression, as if the actions just now were just a performance. "I lied to you, idiot. You don't really believe it, do you?" Ha ha! Akashi Shijiro knew that he had been deceived. His face changed. He suppressed the anger in his heart, gritted his teeth, and uttered a few words. "You got it." Hanamiya didn't care about Akashi Shijiro's mood at all, and continued to laugh crazily, mockingly. As the saying goes, other people's misfortune is as sweet as honey to yourself. So don't get me wrong, idiot. I don't want to win. I just want to see someone who works hard to win, but in the end can only lie on the hospital bed and cry. That look is so beautiful. Ha 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 ha. While Hanamiya smiled crazily, he walked up to Akashi Shijiro and said jokingly, "You asked me if I'm happy?" Hanamiya face showed extreme madness. "Of course I am happy. The game with your seniors last year was a masterpiece." Aomine Daiki quickly rushed over and pushed Hanamiya Makoto away. "You scumbag." After Hanamiya was pushed away, he gently patted the position where he was pushed and said with a smile, "It's not over yet." Then he turned around and walked toward his front court. "Your gnashing of teeth has just begun." Fang Jilai stared at Hua Gongzhen's back because he felt that there was a lie in what Hua Gongzhen said just now. The game continues. Akashi Shijiro dribbled the ball with his right hand through the half and faced Hanamiya Makoto. Hanamiya Makoto's words just now completely angered Akashi Shijiro. Akashi Shijiro didn't intend to pass the ball this time. Akashi Shijiro dribbled the ball continuously under his crotch and then used his left foot to break through quickly from the right side. Hanamiya followed immediately, and while keeping up, he did not forget to secretly make some small movements with his hands. Akashi Shijiro, who sensed Hanamiya Makoto's little move, quickly pulled him back and looked at Hanamiya Makoto angrily. "Despicable guy." Huamongjian spread his hands and said with an evil smile, "What's wrong with our great genius? You can't even break through me, can you?" This was the first time Akashi Shijiro was angered like this by someone. He gritted his teeth and suddenly broke through from the right side. Hanamiya noticed Akashi Shijiro's intention and thought to himself, "Idiot." Hanamiya Makoto quickly blocked the breakthrough route on the right side. Hanamiya Makoto, who thought he could securely defend the ball, suddenly changed his expression in the next second. Fake action. It turns out that Akashi Shijiro just pretended to break through from the right side. The moment Hanamiya Makoto moved his footsteps, Akashi Shijiro made a change of direction and broke through from Hanamiya Makoto's left side. Knowing that he had been beaten, Hanamiya Makoto took a quick look at the referee and found that the referee's eyes were still on Fang Jilai. He stretched out his hand and pulled Akashi Shijiro. As a result, Akashi Shijiro's dribbling rhythm was slightly stuck, and he almost even dribbled the ball away. But Hanamiya really didn't hold on for too long. He just pulled for a little bit and then let go. So Akashi Shijiro rushed inside, got past Seto Kintaro, and scored the ball. After the goal, everyone started to return to defense. On the way back, Akashi Shijiro came to Fang Jilai and said, "Jilai." Fang Jilai turned around and asked, "What's wrong, Ajin?" Akashi Shijiro said, "After the game, add me." Fang Jilai was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, "Okay." In the next few minutes, Fang Jilai kept attacking Mingqing's inside line. Because of the referee buff, everyone in Mingqing did not dare to make any move against Fang Jilai. On the offensive end, Hanamiya Makoto and others still used small actions to attack. This behavior made Aomine Daiki and Atsushi Murasakibara directly full of anger. There are still 26 seconds left in the second quarter, and the score at this time has reached 41-29, with Teikō leading by 12 points. After Akashi Shijiro dribbled the ball across half-court, he seized the opportunity and passed the basketball to Haizaki Shogo, who ran out of the space. Haizaki Shogo threw the basketball into the basket without any hesitation after catching the ball. The score was 43-29. There are only 14 seconds left in the game. Hanamiya Jun reached out for the ball. Seto Kintaro passed the ball to Hanamiya Makoto, who quickly rushed towards Teikō's frontcourt. Facing Akashi Shijiro, he quickly dropped the ball and broke through from the right. Akashi Shijiro hurriedly moved sideways to follow Hanamiya Makoto's footsteps. Hanamiya Jun made a sudden stop movement with his crotch, and at the same time gave Akashi Shijiro a hard push with his left hand. Akashi Shijiro was already in the middle of a rapid sideways movement when he was suddenly pushed like this and suddenly lost his balance and fell to the ground. Bang! Chapter 63 Has This Guy Always Been So Brave? The sound of falling to the ground was heard. When Akashi Shijiro fell to the ground, he subconsciously stretched out his left hand to support the ground. This directly caused Akashi Shijiro's left hand to be violently crushed. Akashi Shijiro groaned. His face looked painful, and his right hand tightly covered the wrist of his left hand. Fang Jilai's heart sank suddenly. He did not expect that Huamong Jun would actually make such an obvious hurtful move. Beat! This time referee Yamada saw it and called Hanamiya Shin a technical foul. Hanamiya spread his hands, took the technical foul indifferently, turned around, and walked towards his frontcourt. He really didn't feel the slightest bit of guilt towards Akashi Shijiro, who was injured by him and collapsed to the ground. Fang Jilai and others rushed over quickly. "Akashi, how are you?" Aomine Daiki asked anxiously. Shirogane Kozo also rushed onto the court to observe Akashi Shijiro's injury. Satsuki Momoi went to call the medical staff. Akashi Shijiro covered his left hand. He felt that his left hand was very painful and he could not use it a little. When Fang Jilai saw this scene, he felt very unhappy. Although he had obtained the buff bonus, this buff bonus was only effective for himself. There is no way. The referees in Sakura Country are really inferior. Even if they have a good relationship, the referee's eyes are basically focused on themselves. This will cause his teammates to be slightly neglected by the referee. It was originally thought that Hanamiya Shin and others would secretly commit fouls. All he had to do was ask Akashi Shijiro and others to pay attention to a few small moves and leave the rest to him. But he never expected that Hanamiya would actually make such an obviously hurtful move. Fang Jilai clenched his fist tightly. Hanamiya Makoto. Fang Jilai executed this technical foul-free throw and hit the basketball steadily. The score came to 44-29. Teikō led by 15 points in the first half. Intermission. In the Teikō lounge. Bang! Damn BD! Aomine Daiki kicked the bench away, venting his anger. Everyone in Teikō also had angry faces, like volcanoes about to erupt. The current situation is that Midorima Shintarō was injured during the warm-up, and was taken to the infirmary for treatment. Akashi Shijiro also went to the infirmary for treatment because of his fall just now. 2 teammates were injured due to flagrant fouls, which made everyone in Teikō suppressed anger. Nijimura Shuzo clenched his fists with an ugly expression. Atsushi Murasakibara didn't even eat, but quietly recovered his strength. Shirogane Kozo and Satsuki Momoi opened the door to the lounge and walked in. Aomine Daiki quickly stepped forward and asked, "Coach, how is Akashi?" Everyone in Teikō looked up at Shirogane Kozo, waiting for Shirogane Kozo's answer. Shirogane Kozo sighed and said, "Akashi-san sprained his left wrist and will not be able to play in this game." After hearing this, King Fong Dahue turned around angrily and kicked the bench away again. "Damn BD." Nijimura Shuzo punched Aomine Daiki on the head. "This, it hurts." Aomine Daiki covered his head and screamed. Nijimura Shuzo said, "Don't mess up your position because of anger." Satsuki Momoi walked to the bench next to Fang Jilai and sat down with a worried expression on his face and said, "Alai." Fang Jilai slowly turned his head, stretched out his hand to touch Satsuki Momoi's head, and comforted softly. "Don't worry, Xia. Azengui and Xiaolui will be fine." Satsuki Momoi shook his head and said worriedly, "Although I'm a little worried about them, I'm most worried about you. I don't want you to get hurt." Fang Jilai trembled slightly. "It turns out that Xiaoya is worried about me." Fang Jilai looked at Satsuki Momoi lovingly and chuckled. "Don't worry, Xiaoya. I have a buff, they can't hurt me." Satsuki Momoi nodded, his worried look still unabated. "Then please pay attention to your safety." Fang Jilai nodded and agreed. "Yes, I will." Platinum Jinzo walked to the middle of the crowd and began to arrange the lineup for the second half. In the second half, Jilai holds the ball. Nijimura goes to the center. "Kuroko, you are ready to connect." Kuroko Tetsuya nodded. "I understand, coach." Nijimura Shuzo wanted to liven up the atmosphere and joked, "Haha, I didn't expect that I would play center again." The intermission ends and the third quarter begins. Teikō ball possession. After Fang Jilai caught the ball, he dribbled the ball through the half court. Facing Hanamiya Makoto, Fang Jilai leaned forward slightly, exerted force with his left foot, and quickly broke through from the right side. In an instant, he broke through Hanamiya's defense. Facing the power forward Mingsheng, who came to defend, Fang Jilai held the ball with both hands, and then used his inertia to engage in physical confrontation with the power forward Mingsheng. The power forward Mingsheng didn't react for a moment and was knocked out instantly. After knocking off power forward Mingsheng, Fang Jilai put the basketball firmly into the basket. Bang! Power forward Mingsheng landed heavily. And after landing, the referee's whistle also sounded. Beep! Mingsheng number 23, blocking foul. Kyu-shan blew the whistle in his mouth. Power forward Mingsheng covered his chest, looked unconvinced, and shouted loudly, "Are you so blind?" As soon as these words came out, Hua Gongzhen's expression changed drastically, and he cursed in his heart. This idiot! Hanamiya really knew that when power forward Mingsheng said these words, he would definitely not be able to continue playing on the court. It is absolutely impossible for the referee to spare him, and will definitely give him a technical foul. In addition to the previous technical foul, Mingsheng's power forward will have 2 technical fouls on his body and will be expelled. Sure enough, just as Hanamiya expected, after power forward Mingsheng said these words, Kyu-shan blew his whistle again and gave power forward Mingsheng a technical foul. 2 technical fouls, direct expulsion. Mingsheng power forward was ejected. The power forward Mingsheng was very unconvinced. He stood up suddenly and rushed towards Kayashin, raised his fist and waved it down. Kyu-shan didn't react for a moment, because Kyu-shan couldn't believe that someone dared to attack the referee on the court. Kyu-shan was knocked to the ground by a sudden punch. As Kyu-shan's good brother, Yamada naturally could not stand by and watch, and immediately rushed forward to grab the power forward Mingsheng. The actions of power forward Mingsheng made the audience feel incredible. It was their first time to see an attacking referee. There was chaos. The security of the arena rushed over immediately and pulled Yamada and power forward Akiching apart. Hanamiya Makoto looked at this scene with an ugly face and he didn't know how many times he cursed the power-forward Mingsheng in his heart. Fang Jilai stood aside with a strange look on his face. Is this guy so brave? Just go up to the referee. Chapter 64, The Terrifying Shadow. After the conflict, Kyushan was not seriously injured. Mingsheng, a power forward, was taken away by the arena security. Fang Jilai did not know what punishment would be imposed in the aftermath. The game starts again. The current score is 48-29, with Teikō leading by 19 points. Mingsheng returned to the bench to take over the power forward position. Hanamiya dribbled the ball through the half. Facing Fang Jilai, who was guarding him, Hanamiya, who knew he was losing, immediately called for a pick and roll. The small forward Mingsheng quickly came up to pick and roll. Due to his poor skills, the small forward Mingsheng was unable to effectively pick and roll Fang Jilai. Hanamiya saw that the small forward Mingsheng was not good, so he called the power forward Mingsheng to come up and pick and roll. But later Hanamiya discovered that Mingsheng's power forward could only block Fang Jilai for a short while, and Fang Jilai could quickly bypass Mingsheng's power forward to defend himself again. With no other choice, Hanamiya had no choice but to observe the positions of other teammates. When he found that the shooting guard seemed to be unguarded, Hanamiya passed the basketball to the open shooting guard, who then shot directly after receiving the ball. Brush. 3 points are valid. The shooting guard was also surprised after scoring the goal because he found that he had no defender at all. Teikō seemed to have only 4 people on the court. Hanamiya also discovered this, and an ominous premonition emerged from his heart. Transition of possession, Teikō possession. Fang Jilai slowly dribbled the ball through the half. Facing Wamong's serious defense, Fang Jilai smiled slightly and passed the ball out. Hanamiya glanced at the direction of Fang Jilai's pass and found that there was no one in that position. A mistake. Just when Hanamiya was still surprised, the basketball suddenly turned around and fell into the hands of Niji Zizu. Huamong's expression changed drastically, and his face was filled with disbelief. The ball took a turn. Nijimura received the ball without hesitation, turned around, and dumped the basketball into the basket. Sito Kintaro also had a look of disbelief on his face. He never imagined that the basketball would actually turn into Shuzo Nijimura's hands. After everyone in Teikō scored a goal, they started to defend. On the way, Nijimura Shuzo praised, "Kuroko, your pass is so beautiful." Kuroko Tetsuya nodded. "Thank you for the compliment." Sito Kintaro then noticed Kuroko Tetsuya and asked in surprise, "Is there such a person on the court just now?" Hanamiya didn't reply and stared at Kuroko Tetsuya with an ugly expression because he didn't know where Kuroko Tetsuya came from. In this way, the game continued, and the score between Teikō and Mingsheng became larger and larger. On the offensive end, Mingsheng's small forward and power forward were unable to provide help to Hanamiya at all, and Hanamiya was unable to break through Fang Jilai on his own. All offense can only be carried out by relying on the shooting guard, because Kuroko Tetsuya's defense is so poor. On the defensive end, Teikō made Mingsheng and others realize what weirdness is. The ball passed by Fang Jilai turned inexplicably, which surprised Mingsheng and others. The weird passing made them have no idea where to defend. There are 2 minutes left before the end of the third quarter. Mingsheng has the ball. Mingsheng, a small forward, looked at the white hair in front of him with an ugly expression, and a burst of anger burst out from his heart. Small forward Ikinari decided to make some small moves to teach Haizaki Shogo a lesson. Small forward Ikinari steps on Haizaki Shogo's foot and reaches out for the ball. Hanamiya, ball. The small forward Mingsheng waited quietly for the ball to be passed to his hands, but the ball was not passed to him, but his fist was passed. Collapse. Mingsheng, a small forward, felt that there were suddenly a few stars around him, and then his vision went dark and he fell to the ground. Yamada quickly blew the whistle in his mouth. Beat. After hearing the whistle, everyone in Teikō looked towards the referee in confusion. When they turned around, they saw a person lying at the feet of Haizaki Shogo. Haizaki Shogo made a cut sound and murmured, "You actually got into trouble with me. You were so tired of living." Yamada immediately called a technical foul on Haizaki Shogo, and then checked the status of small forward Kinari. Fang Jilai walked up to Haizaki Shogo and whispered, "Didn't I tell you to move more slowly?" Haizaki Shogo immediately changed his attitude and said sheepishly, Sorry, I couldn't hold it back just now, I couldn't hold it back." Fang Jilai nodded helplessly, patted Haizaki Shogo on the shoulder, and said, "Forget it this time, remember to be smaller next time, and don't be too obvious." Haizaki Shogo quickly nodded in agreement. After Yamada found that he could not wake up the small forward Mingsheng, he immediately called the medical staff and took the small forward Mingsheng away. Fang Jilai walked up to Hua Gongjin and returned those words. "Your gnashing of teeth has just begun." After saying that, he turned around and left. Hanamang Jun looked ferocious, feeling disgusted for the first time. In the past, they were the main force in destroying others. But now it's the other way around. Their main force has been eliminated. Although Teik's main force is also lost too, their strength has not decreased much. On the contrary, on my side, 3 people have gone down, and the basic strength of the defensive and offensive ends has been greatly reduced. It can be said that this game is already a losing situation, and Fang Jilai seems to have ideas about himself. Hua Gongjin looked at Fang Jilai's back, and he suddenly saw an unknown dark shadow bursting out from Fang Jilai's body. The black shadow slowly rose, covering the ceiling of the entire basketball hall. After the black shadow covered the entire ceiling, he slowly opened his eyes. It was a pair of blood-red eyes, which exuded an extremely dangerous aura. Hanamiya looked at it, and it was this look that made Hanamiya feel like he was a small prey being targeted by a terrifying hunter. A cold air instantly hit his Tianling guy. Huamon was really scared. This was the first time he felt scared. He felt extremely uneasy and piercing in his heart, as if he was in a cold and dark space. "No, you can't fight anymore. You will die if you fight again." Huamong, what's wrong with you, Huamong? Talk." Sito Kintaro saw Hanamiya standing there in a daze, so he stepped forward and asked. Hanamiya Ma's head was constantly sweating, and he didn't even hear Sito Kintaro's shouts. Sito Kintaro noticed something was wrong and quickly shook Hanamiya Makoto and said loudly, "Flower Palace." Hanamiya Jun came back to his senses instantly, looked at Sito Kintaro with fearful eyes, and said with a trembling voice, No, can't fight anymore." Hanamiya Jun grabbed Sito Kintaro's clothes and said in panic, "Kintaro, we can't fight anymore. If we fight again, we will die." After saying that, Hanamiya ignored Sito Kintaro's doubts and turned directly to the referee and shouted, "Referee, timeout. We asked for a timeout." Chapter 65, Before You Bring Garbage Bags. Why don't you put your uniforms out of the way? Although Yamada was confused, he still blew the whistle. Beep. Mingsheng requests a timeout. Before Sito Kintaro could ask anything, Hanamiya Shin pulled him down. After finishing the game, Hanamiya Jin immediately gave instructions. Iwahara, Bizwa, you two take the place of me and Kintaro. The 2 substitutes were very confused and didn't understand why Hanamiya arranged this. They didn't dare to ask any more questions because they felt that Hanamiya was really not feeling well. So they had to attribute all this to Hanamiya knowing that they couldn't win the game and giving up the subsequent games before letting the 2 of them play. The 2 of them wanted to cry, but did not want to cry because they did not want to go on stage and be abused. After Hanamiya arranged everything, he took Sito Kintaro directly out of the stadium. Everyone in Mingsheng looked at Hanamiya Makoto and Sito Kintaro in confusion. Mingsheng's shooting guard asked, "Huamong, where are you going?" Hanamiya didn't reply and fled the court with Sito Kintaro. Fang Jilai noticed this. He turned to Haizaki Shogo beside him and said, "Haizaki." Haizaki Shogo also noticed the movements of Hanamiya Makoto and Sito Kintaro, and he nodded, "I see." Fang Jilai walked to by Jingeng Zhao, smiled, and said, "Coach, Haizaki feels a little uncomfortable in his stomach. He wants to go to the toilet first, okay?" Shirogane Jinzo took a sip of tea and said, "Oh, is that so? Hongsuin is feeling a little uncomfortable in his stomach, so why don't they team up?" "Coach, I don't have a belly." Nijimura Shizo was confused and wanted to speak, but was stopped by Shirogane Xo's eyes. Fang Jilai laughed sheepishly and said, "Haha, coach, isn't it a bit bad to form a team while going to the toilet?" Shirogane Jinzo smiled and said, "What's wrong with this? Are grown men still afraid of this?" This? Fang Jilai didn't know how to reply. Shirogane Jinzo laughed and said, "I still don't know what you think. One person is not safe enough. Let Hongtsun follow." Fang Jilai immediately understood that Bai Jin Gungzeo had known their thoughts for a long time, and Bai Jin Gungzeo did not stop them. Platinum Kozo continued, "If it were any other team, I wouldn't have allowed you to do this, but for Mingcheng, I allowed it. One is because they hurt Midorima and Akashi, and the other is because they won't report it. If they are beaten, they will only feel that they are inferior to others. Okay, no more words. Go quickly, or they will run away. By the way, just to be on the safe side, wear a hood so that no one will recognize you." Fang Jilai nodded, turned around, and urged, "Haizaki, you and Nijimura-senpai, go quickly. Remember not to be recognized." Haizaki Shogo touched the back of his head and said a little unhappy, "Really, I am enough alone." Nijimura Shizo kicked Haizaki Shogo's butt and urged, "What nonsense are you talking about? Hurry up and lead the way." Haizaki Shogo touched his butt and said, Hey, I know. King Fengdehui stepped forward at this moment, pointed at himself with his finger, and asked, "Alai, coach, what about me?" Fang Jilai patted King Fengdehui on the shoulder and said, "Aren't there so many people over there in Mingcheng?" King Fengdehui turned to look at Mingcheng's bench and then nodded. "Okay." Haizaki Shogo and Nijimura Shizo walked directly to the players' tunnel, ready to intercept Hanamiya Makoto and Sito Kintaro. Shirogane Kozo looked at the two people leaving, took a sip of tea, and said, "In the second half, Shirowa, Ikijin passerby, chosen at will, takes Haizaki's place, and Atsushi Murasakibara takes Nijimura's place." Atsushi Murasakibara and Shiraiwa nodded. In the players' tunnel, Nijimura Shizo and Haizaki Shogo ran quickly, preparing to intercept Hanamiya Makoto and Sito Kintaro. "Haizaki, do you have a hood there?" Nijimura Shizo turned around and asked. Haizaki Shogo looked at Nijimura Shizo speechlessly and complained, "Do you think I'm the one who wears a hood at all times?" Nijimura Shizo smiled awkwardly and then said, "Then it looks like we need to find something to cover up." As he spoke, Hongsu and Xiaozhao seemed to catch a glimpse of something from the corner of his eye and quickly turned around and ran back. After seeing what was in front of him, Nijimura Shizo said excitedly, "Found it." Haizaki Shogo turned around and ran back, looked at what Nijimura Shizo had found, and immediately said with disgust, "There's no way I can carry this thing." It turns out that what Hongsu and Zizu saw was a black garbage bag in the trash can. Nijimura Shizo took out the big garbage bag, tore it in half, and handed one half to Haizaki Shogo. "Hurry up, this garbage bag has just been replaced. No one has thrown garbage into it. It is very clean." Haizaki Shogo was still disgusted, but Nijimura Shizo immediately interrupted. "Have you forgotten who called you?" Haizaki Shogo's expression changed. He gritted his teeth and took the garbage bag from Nijimura Shizo's hand, put on his head, gritted his teeth, and said, "Hurry up. Don't let them get away." After saying that, Haizaki Shogo turned around and ran forward. Nijimura Shizo was stunned for a moment, then shook his head helplessly. "This kid, only Lai can cure you." Hongsun Zuzu took a garbage bag and chased after him. The two ran quickly and soon caught up with Hanamiya Makoto and Sito Kintaro. The two quickly passed Hanamiya Makoto and Sito Kintaro, blocked in front of Hanamiya Makoto and Sito Kintaro, and said, "Stop." Hanamiya Jun looked at the two people wearing garbage bags in confusion and said in a caring tone, "Hongtsuan and that white-haired boy, what are you two doing here? Are you not going to play a game?" Haizaki Shogo heard that Hanamung Jun recognized the identities of the two people. He was stunned at first. Then he remembered Fang Jilai's words not to be recognized. So Haizaki Shogo said harshly, "What are you talking about? What Hongtsuan? What white-haired boy? I don't understand." Hanamung Jun laughed and said mockingly, "Before you bring garbage bags, don't you put a coat on to cover your uniforms? Are you kidding me like a fool?" As soon as these words came out, Haizaki Shogo and Nijimura Shizo looked down at the clothes they were wearing. After seeing the bright character's Teikō, they fell silent. The four of them were silent for a while, and after a while, Haizaki Shogo took the lead in breaking the silence. Haizaki Shogo pulled off the garbage bag on his head and said, "Since we've been discovered anyway, we don't bother to bring this thing with us." Nijimura Shizo nodded in approval, took off the garbage bag on his head, and murmured speechlessly, "Why did you forget to wear a coat?" Chapter 66, wasn't it discovered? Hanamiya looked at the two of them warily, vaguely guessing what they were thinking. "You, can't you?" The main force of Teikō, who is so dignified, would actually go outside the field to block me. A small character? Hanamiya said. Hongsu and Zaizu did not respond directly. He moved his arms and said, "You are no small character, Hanamiya Makoto." Haizaki Shogo interrupted. "What nonsense! I am not the main force anyway." After Haizaki Shogo finished speaking, he rushed forward, raised his fist, and smashed Hanamiya in the face. Hanamiya's expression changed, and he quickly dodged back. Haizaki Shogo's fist passed by Hanamiya's eyes and brought up Hanamiya's hair. Hanamiya narrowly dodged the punch. After dodging, Hanamiya said quickly, "Aren't you afraid that I will report you and disqualify you from the competition?" Just when Nijimura Shizo was about to rush forward and take action, after hearing Hanamiya's words, Nijimura Shizo stopped and hesitated. Nijimura Shizo hesitated, but Haizaki Shogo did not. Haizaki Shogo stepped forward and waved his fist. "You report it. It's me who beats you. It's none of their business." Haizaki Shogo said coldly. Hanamiya looked stunned after hearing this, and felt that there seemed to be some truth to it, but he was also a little stuck in his words. "You? What are you doing? Just eat your fist." While speaking, Haizaki Shogo punched Hanamiya's nose. Hanamiya's nose suddenly felt cold, and then nosebleeds spurted out from Hanamiya's nose. Hanamiya is not a simple person. After discovering that Haizaki Shogo was not threatened at all, he immediately launched a counterattack. Hanamiya Makoto raised his foot and kicked Haizaki Shogo violently. Haizaki Shogo grabbed Hanamiya Makoto's foot and pulled him back, making Hanamiya Makoto lose his balance. Haizaki Shogo raised his foot and kicked Hanamiya Makoto in the stomach. Hanamiya held her stomach and took a few steps back, raised her head, touched her nose with her right hand, and glanced at the fingers of her right hand. After discovering that it was covered with blood, Hanamiya shouted angrily, "You forced me to do it!" "Kintaro!" Hanamiya roared angrily and rushed forward. Upon seeing this, Kintaro rushed out with Hanamiya Makoto, and the situation became a 2-on-1 situation. Facing attacks from two people, Haizaki Shogo was okay at first, but later Haizaki Shogo discovered that Hanamiya Makoto and Kintaro actually cooperated. This made Haizaki Shogo very uncomfortable, and he could only resist the attacks of Hanamiya Makoto and Kintaro with difficulty. Hongsu Shiozao shook his head helplessly and murmured, "This idiot, does he only use brute force when fighting?" After Nijimura Shizo finished speaking, he put the mobile phone in his hand on the ground and focused the camera on Hanamiya Makoto and Kintaro. After putting it away, Hongsu Zizu said to the camera, "I have this video as proof. Hanamiya Makoto and Kintaro attacked my junior. I'm going to break up the fight." After saying that, Hongsu Shiozao turned around and rushed forward, shouting loudly, "Stop! Stop everyone!" Haizaki Shogo struggled to resist the attack. After hearing Nijimura Shizo's shouts, Haizaki Shogo complained in his heart, "Why don't you hold on? I can't resist anymore." Hongsu Zizu stepped forward and stopped Hanamiya, shouting, "Huamong, I told you to stop." After Kintaro saw Hanamiya being stopped, he immediately turned around and punched Nijimura Shizo. Hongsu and Zaizu quickly dodged and said loudly after dodging, Hey, what are you doing? Let's talk." Kintaro did not stop and kept attacking Nijimura Shizo. Hongsu Shiozao kept dodging, raised the corners of his mouth slightly, and shouted, "If you don't stop, I will fight back." Hanamiya stood up, anger took over his brain, and he quickly rushed forward to attack Nijimura Shuzo with Seto Kintaro. Hongsun Shiozao smiled slightly and said, "I have to defend myself." After saying that, Nijimura Shuzo took a stance, avoiding the attacks of Hanamiya Makoto and Seto Kintaro while punching back. In less than a moment, Hanamiya Jun and Seto Kintaro were knocked unconscious by Nijimura Shuzo. Hanamiya Makoto and Seto Kintaro both had noses bruised and faces swollen and passed out on the ground. With a shocked expression on his face, Haizaki Shogo stepped forward and said, "Eh?" Before Haizaki Shogo finished speaking, Nijimura Shuzo raised his hand to signal Haizaki Shogo to stop talking. Nijimura Shuzo walked to the place where he had just put his cell phone, picked it up and pointed it at his face, saying, "The video proves that it was Hanamiya Makoto and Seto Kintaro who attacked me first. I was acting in self-defense." Having said that, Hongsun Shiozao turned off the photography mode. Haizaki Shogo pointed at the phone in confusion and asked, "Or?" Nijimura Shuzo turned around, raised his fist, and hit Haizaki Shogo on the head. Haizaki Shogo was in pain, holding his head and wailing, "It hurts, it hurts." It was only at this time that Hongsun Shiozao explained, "Don't be so impulsive next time, don't get caught. This video proves that I had no choice but to take action, otherwise I would not be able to explain myself if I was reported. Be smarter next time, you hear me?" Haizaki Shogo covered his head and nodded. "I understand." Nijimura Shuzo nodded happily and took 2 photos of the tragic situation of Hanamiya Makoto and Seto Kintaro with his mobile phone. After confirming that it was correct, Hongsun Shiozao called the ambulance number. "Hey, is this the hospital? Someone here is injured." "Yes, speaking." "Don't know who hit me. I just saw it too." "We are right. Come on soon." "Okay, thank you." After making the call, Nijimura Shuzo took Haizaki Shogo's clothes and walked to the court. "Let's go. Don't pull me. I will walk by myself." Haizaki Shogo spoke unhappily, then broke away and walked quickly to the court. Nijimura Shuzo stood there and looked at Haizaki Shogo's back, with the corners of his mouth raised. "This brat." Beep. The game is over. When Haizaki Shogo and Nijimura Shuzo walked into the court, the game was already over. Because of the loss of Hanamiya Makoto and Seto Kintaro, as well as the lessons learned from the 3 of them, Akiching and others did not dare to make small moves anymore. The game was taken away by Teikō effortlessly. Teikō Middle School beat Meisei Middle School with 98 points to 50 points. Fang Jilai walked up to the 2 of them and asked, "Is it resolved?" Haizaki Shogo nodded and said, "Solved." Fang Jilai turned around and looked at Hongsun Shiozao. After seeing Hongsun Shiozao nodding, Fang Jilai said, "Hasn't it been discovered?" Chapter 67. All hospitalized. Haizaki Shogo suddenly became nervous and said coquettishly, That's." Fang Jilai frowned slightly, guessing that Haizaki Shogo might have been discovered. So he said, "Didn't I tell you to wear a hood?" Haizaki Shogo didn't know how to speak because it was really embarrassing to say it. Helpless, Fang Jilai had no choice but to turn a look at Hongsun Shiozao and asked, "Senior Nijimura, please tell me what's going on?" Hongsun Shiozao touched his nose in embarrassment and said awkwardly, It's just, hey, Jilai, it'll be okay if you're discovered, haha." Platinum Jingzo stepped forward to break up the trouble and said, "Hongsun, tell me, what's going on?" Everyone in Teikō looked at Nijimura Shuzo. Nijimura Shuzo met with Coach Shirogane and asked about it. If he knew that this matter was not explained clearly, it would definitely not end well. So Hongsun laughed awkwardly twice and told the reason. "Well, we actually wore hoods, but we just forgot to put on our coats. Hanamiya Makoto recognized us by our uniforms." Fang Jilai and others were all stunned on the spot. A little unbelievable that this was the reason. Fang Jilai twitched his lips unnaturally and asked a tricky question. "Senior Nijimura, where did your hoods come from?" Hongsun Shiozao was slightly startled and said embarrassedly, that. Haizaki Shogo felt that the long-term pain was worse than the short-term pain, so he directly interjected, "Trash bag." After Fang Jilai heard this, he patted Nijimura Shuzo and Haizaki Shogo on the shoulders and said with a suppressed smile, "Senior Nijimura? Haizaki, thank you for your hard work." Nijimura Shuzo and Haizaki Shogo waved their hand at the same time and said awkwardly, "It's not hard. It's not hard." Fang Jilai raised the corner of his mouth and said, "Okay, clean up. There will be a battle later." After hearing this, King Feng Dahue laughed and said, "Hurry, hurry. I can't bear it anymore." Atsushi Murasakibara put down the 0 hour in his hand and said, "Me too." Fang Jilai smiled softly and followed behind everyone. Everyone went to the locker room and changed clothes quickly. Then something strange happened to Mingqing's players today. After school, everyone in Mingqiang was tied up by a group of people wearing strange hoods and taken to the woods to teach them a lesson. Collapse! The man wearing a monkey head mask punched Power Forward Mingqiang in the face. Power Forward Mingqiang was in pain and wanted to fight back, but because he was tied up, he couldn't fight back at all. Power Forward Mingqiang roared, "Let me go if you can. Let's fight one-on-one." The monkey tilted his head and actually untied the rope. The other people wearing hoods stopped beating the people in Mingqiang and turned to look in the direction of the monkey head. After Mingqing's Power Forward was freed from his restraints, he immediately rushed forward to attack the monkey head. The monkey head did not fight back and kept avoiding the attacks of Mingqing's Power Forward. After dodging many times in a row, Power Forward Mingqiang said angrily and helplessly, "Do you only know how to hide?" The monkey head tilted his head again and kicked Mingqiang, the Power Forward, in the stomach. Power Forward Mingqiang fell to the ground holding his stomach. Mingqiang, a Power Forward, raised his head with a painful look on his face. When he looked up, he saw a black soul. Boom! The monkey head kicked Mingqing's Power Forward in the face, and Mingqing's Power Forward instantly flew backwards and passed out. Mingqing's shooting guard saw that Mingqing's Power Forward couldn't even get past the monkey's hand, so he panicked and said, "Who the hell are you? Why are you doing this to us?" A tall man wearing a smiling mask walked up to him and looked at him quietly. The man in the smiling mask reached out and grabbed Mingqing's shooting guard's head. Mingqing's shooting guard looked at the smiling mask in fear and fainted. Smiling mask let go of his hand and said in confusion, "Ah, how? Cough, cough, cough." The monkey head coughed quickly, and the smiling mask reacted and closed its mouth. Zhutu walked up to Mingqing's small forward and knocked him unconscious with 2 punches. People in other masks also knocked the remaining Mingqing members unconscious. The person wearing a chicken head mask called an ambulance and then left with everyone. After leaving, the man in the pig head mask took off his hood, revealing his original face. It was Aomine Daiki. "Oh, it's so good, Alai. So relieved. It's a pity that Midorima and Akashi didn't come," King Feng Dahue said. Atsushi Murasakibara also took off the smiling face mask and said, "Fang Zai, I'm so hungry." Hongsu and Shizo took off the chicken head mask and said, "It's indeed dinner time." Fang Jilai took off the monkey head and said, "Okay, let's go eat first." Haizaki should have found a good place. When Atsushi Murasakibara heard that he wanted to eat, he instantly became happy. On the other side, Haizaki Shogo looked at the wailing small forward Mingqiang in front of him and said coldly, "You're really lucky. You came out of the hospital so quickly." The bandaged small forward Mingqiang begged for mercy in horror. "Please, if I have offended you, I will change it. I will definitely change it." Haizaki Shogo shook his head and said nothing, then kicked Mingqiang's small forward to the ground. Haizaki Shogo kept Nijimura's words in mind, took out his phone and dialed the ambulance number, then turned and left. Since then, all Mingqiang players have entered the hospital to sleep. In the hospital, Hanamiya Makoto and Sito Kintaro were lying on the hospital bed, receiving intravenous fluids. Sito Kintaro said, "Huamong, don't we report it?" Huamong Jun looked unconvinced and said angrily, "Report? There is no way Hongsuan will give us a chance. Have you forgotten those words he said when he fought with us? Those are all for others to listen to. He must have recorded the video somewhere. Reporting it will only make things worse for the two of us." Sito Kintaro looked painful and felt very unconvinced, so he said, "But, Hanamung, can you really bear this tone?" Hanamung Jun looked at the ceiling and said sinisterly, "Of course I can't bear this breath. I must." Boom, boom, boom. There was a sudden knock on the door of the ward. Hanamiya Makoto and Sito Kintaro looked at the door at the same time, wondering who would come to the hospital at this time. Click. The door to the ward was pushed open, and a figure walked in. The figure walked to Hanamiya Makoto and Sito Kintaro's ward and stopped. Both. Chapter 68, First 10 Sets. Alai, see you tomorrow. Satsuki Momoi waved his hand and said goodbye to Fang Jilai. Fang Jilai nodded, waved his hand, and said, "Yeah, see you Xiaoya tomorrow." Fang Jilai continued walking after making sure Satsuki Momoi returned home. When Fang Jilai returned home, he found that his father was not at home. Fang Jilai thought in confusion, "Where's Dad? Are you busy again?" After looking around, he found no trace of his father. Fang Jilai entered the bathroom and took a shower without paying too much attention. After taking a shower, I lay down on the bed and went to sleep. The next day, "Shall I? There's a friend downstairs looking for you." Father Fang woke up Fang Jilai, who was still sleeping. Fang Jilai opened his eyes drowsily. What?" Father Fang had no choice but to pull Fang Jilai up and force the phone to turn on. "There's a little girl downstairs looking for you. Others have been waiting for you downstairs for a long time." Fang Jilai was stunned for 2 seconds, then picked up the cell phone beside him and started reading. The moment he saw the time, Fang Jilai suddenly woke up. "I'm going to oversleep." Fang Jilai ejected, rushed up, put on his clothes and trousers, ran to the balcony and looked down. Fang Jilai trembled when he saw Satsuki Momoi standing downstairs at a glance. "It's over. Xiaoya must have been waiting for a long time." Fang Jilai quickly rushed out of the room and prepared to rush downstairs. "Shall I? Breakfast. Dad, you can eat it. I won't eat it yet. Come back here." Father Fang grabbed Fang Jilai and pulled him back. Fang Jilai broke away and asked, "Dad, what are you doing? Others will be waiting later." Father Fang pointed at Fang Jilai's hair and clothes and scolded, "You're going out on a date like this? Go back and wash up and change clothes. Why are you going out like this?" Fang Jilai was stunned for a moment, touched his head embarrassedly, and said cautiously, "Dad, you know." Father Fang affirmed, "Your father came here like this, and I still don't understand this? Hurry up." Father Fang kicked Fang Jilai and urged Fang Jilai. There was no other way, so Fang Jilai had no choice but to wash up quickly, change his clothes, and walk out of the room. "Dad, I'm leaving." Father Fang stopped Fang Jilai again, stretched out his hand, and handed out a card. "Take this card, be generous, and try to date as early as possible." Fang Jilai grabbed the bank card, turned around, and rushed downstairs. "I know, Dad. I don't have to worry about it anymore." Father Fang looked at his son's back and smiled fondly. "This kid really looks like me when I was young. No, what am I saying? My own seed must look like mine." Fang Jilai rushed downstairs and said to Satsuki Momoi, who was waiting, "Sorry, Xiaoya, I overslept." After Satsuki Momoi heard the familiar voice, he turned around in surprise and said sweetly, "It's okay, Alai. I just arrived not long ago." Fang Jilai smiled sheepishly and touched Satsuki Momoi's head. "Yeah, let's go. Where do you want to go?" Satsuki Momoi didn't resist Fang Jilai's actions and enjoyed Fang Jilai's headbutting attack. Let's go shopping." Fang Jilai nodded. "I'll listen to you." After getting Fang Jilai's answer, Satsuki Momoi smiled sweetly. "Let's go." Satsuki Momoi took Fang Jilai's hand and started walking towards the street. After walking onto the street, many small vendors and shops were already open. Satsuki Momoi happily walked to the door of a clothing store and stared at a dress. Fang Jilai noticed Satsuki Momoi's gaze and, without asking, directly pulled Satsuki Momoi towards the store. Sometimes, actions speak louder than words. Satsuki Momoi didn't say anything and let Fang Jilai lead her away. Walking into the store, a clerk came over quickly. "Hello, you two. What do you need to see?" Fang Jilai pointed to the skirt on the display stand and asked, "How much does that dress cost?" The clerk's expression changed slightly. He looked at the skirt and then at Fang Jilai, feeling shocked. Which young master is this? The clerk immediately became enthusiastic and introduced Fang Jilai. Sir, you have such good taste. This dress is the treasure of our store. It is from romantic country. Fang Jilai interrupted the clerk's bragging and said straight to the point. Just tell me the price. The clerk suddenly became excited and secretly said that he had met the financial owner. People like this who ask the price directly without caring about anything are often the big sponsors. The clerk said enthusiastically, Sir, this dress only costs 2.2 million now. Fang Jilai was slightly startled when he heard the price. 2.2 million yen is equivalent to nearly 100,000 local currency. A dress costs 100,000 yuan, which is very expensive for ordinary people. Of course, that includes Satsuki Momoi. Satsuki Momoi was shocked by the price, took Fang Jilai's hand to dissuade her. Alai, it's too expensive, we don't want it anymore. Satsuki Momoi said as she tried to pull Fang Jilai out. But Fang Jilai made no move. For Fang Jilai, 2.2 million yen was nothing. Fang Jilai asked the clerk, Can I try it first? The clerk hesitated for a while, then took another look at Fang Jilai's clothes. After discovering that Fang Jilai was wearing all famous brands, the clerk gritted his teeth and decided to take a gamble. Yes, sir. Fang Jilai nodded and said to Satsuki Momoi, Xiaoya, let's try it. Satsuki Momoi stood there hesitantly, looking at Fang Jilai worriedly. Alai, let's not give it up. It's really too expensive. Fang Jilai smiled softly, touched Satsuki Momoi's head, and said softly, It's okay, let's try it. Satsuki Momoi still didn't want Fang Jilai to spend so much money, so he tried to dissuade her, but Fang Jilai interrupted Satsuki Momoi. Be obedient. I go shopping just to have fun, not to mention my dad has a lot of money. I'll be angry if you don't wear it. Reluctantly, Satsuki Momoi nodded, took the skirt handed over by the clerk, and went to the dressing room to change. Fang Jilai sat on the sofa in the store, waiting for Satsuki Momoi to change clothes. During this period, Fang Jilai also looked at a few suits, thinking about whether to buy one for Aomine Daiki and the others. Boss, can this kind of suit be customized? Fang Jilai asked, pointing to the suit in his hand. The clerk walked over quickly, saw the suit that Fang Jilai was interested in, and said, Sure, sir. How many sets do you want to order? What are the sizes? After learning that suits could be customized, Fang Jilai was unequivocal and spoke domineeringly. 10 sets first. Chapter 69 Daily Life. Fang Jilai decided to buy a set for 8 Teikō people, including himself and 2 coaches. The clerk's face was full of shock, and he kept thinking to himself, Get rich. Get rich. The clerk immediately took out his notebook and asked, Sir, can you tell me the size? Fang Jilai was stunned because he had never asked King Feng Dahue about their clothes size. Just when Fang Jilai was in trouble, Satsuki Momoi changed her clothes and walked out. I know. Fang Jilai turned to look at Satsuki Momoi. The moment he saw it, Fang Jilai was shocked. Beautiful. So beautiful. Fang Jilai stared blankly at Satsuki Momoi, fascinated for a moment. Satsuki Momoi saw that Fang Jilai was stunned after seeing him, covered her mouth, smiled, and joked, Alai, am I beautiful? Fang Jilai nodded dumbly. Beautiful. Satsuki Momoi snickered twice and said, Okay, come to your senses. Fang Jilai finally came back to his senses and looked at Satsuki Momoi. She is indeed pretty. She is indeed my girlfriend. Satsuki Momoi lowered her head shyly. Fang Jilai looked at Satsuki Momoi in front of him with a smile, and felt that Satsuki Momoi was too cute. Fang Jilai secretly made up his mind that he would never make Satsuki Momoi sad in the future. The clerk really didn't want to break the sweetness between the two, but for the sake of money, she still had to bite the bullet and ask, Ma'am, is that size? Oh yes, I'll tell you the size. Satsuki Momoi reacted and told the store clerk everyone's size, including the coaches. The clerk quickly recorded the numbers without daring to get distracted. After all, this was a big customer. Fang Jilai listened blankly as Satsuki Momoi kept saying the numbers. After Satsuki Momoi finished speaking, Fang Jilai asked, Xiaoya, how could you? Satsuki Momoi raised her lips sweetly and explained, I am the team's consultant. I don't even know the basic information about my team members, so how can we be a good consultant? Fang Jilai nodded and gave Satsuki Momoi a thumbs up. My girlfriend is amazing. Satsuki Momoi raised her head proudly when she heard Fang Jilai's praise. Does it fit? Fang Jilai asked. Satsuki Momoi nodded. Very suitable. Fang Jilai continued to ask, Do you like it? Satsuki Momoi replied, I like it. Fang Jilai smiled slightly and said softly, As long as you like it. Fang Jilai took out his bank card from his pocket and said to the clerk, Swipe your card. The clerk was shocked and tremblingly took the bank card handed over by Fang Jilai. Okay. Okay, sir. Counting those 10 suits? Fang Jilai nodded. Of course. Okay. Okay, sir. Just a moment. After the clerk finished speaking, he turned around and was about to swipe his card. On the way, the clerk said excitedly to himself, Get rich. Get rich. Big client. The clerk excitedly picked up the card swiping machine, inserted the card in, entered the price, took the card swiping machine to Fang Jilai's side and said, Sir, please enter your password. After Fang Jilai entered the password, the clerk looked at the card machine excitedly, but then his excited expression disappeared instantly. Fang Jilai noticed the change in the clerk's expression and asked, What's wrong? The clerk suppressed his anger and tried to calm himself down as much as possible. Sir, your card balance is insufficient. How is that possible? Fang Jilai said doubtfully, This is the card his father just gave him in the morning. Judging from his father's virtue, the money will basically not be less than 7 figures, long currency. Fang Jilai took the card machine and switched it to the balance interface. He fell silent looking at the number of 10,000 yen, 500 long currency, on the balance. The dating fund my dad gave me is only 500. Fang Jilai complained slightly in his heart. Other side, Father Fang was drinking tea and reading the newspaper when he suddenly sneezed. Akio. Father Fang shook his head and murmured doubtfully, Who is scolding me? It's probably that brat Lai. That brat must have seen the balance in the card. He must have been pleasantly surprised. You deserve it. You make other girls wait for so long. I have never made your mother wait like this before. Just use your little treasury honestly. Ha ha. Fang Jilai helplessly took out another card from his pocket. This was Fang Jilai's small treasury, and Fang Jilai had never used it much. There are probably nearly 8 digits, long currency. Sorry, swipe this card. The clerk was dubious, took the bank card, inserted it into the card machine, and said, Sir, password. Fang Jilai entered the password, and then the clerk looked at the card machine. After the card machine showed that the card was swiped successfully, the clerk immediately became excited and rekindled his enthusiasm. Sir, please keep your card and leave your contact information. We will send the suit to you when it is ready. Do you think you want to wrap this dress? Fang Jilai turned around and asked Satsuki Momoi for his opinion. When Satsuki Momoi nodded, Fang Jilai said to the clerk, Wrap it up. The clerk nodded and waited for Satsuki Momoi to change clothes. Satsuki Momoi walked into the dressing room and changed out of her clothes. The clerk wrapped it up in very beautiful packaging. After Fang Jilai left his contact information, he and Satsuki Momoi left the store. Welcome both of you to come again next time. The clerk watched Fang Jilai and Satsuki Momoi leave. After the two left, the clerk no longer concealed his excitement, jumped up happily, and kept cheering, Haha, get rich, get rich. The performance of this single transaction is only enough for my salary for several months. That girl is really lucky. With such a boyfriend, why don't I have this fate? Fang Jilai and Satsuki Momoi continued shopping. After passing by a shoe store, Satsuki Momoi dragged Fang Jilai in regardless of what she said. Alai, you must go in. I want to buy you a pair of sneakers. Fang Jilai had no choice but to follow Satsuki Momoi into the shoe store and buy a pair of shoes. After shopping, the two set off again and walked around for a long time. They bought many things on the way. Satsuki Momoi and Fang Jilai each took half of the things. Suddenly, Satsuki Momoi handed all the things to Fang Jilai. Alai, I'm going to use the toilet. Please wait for me. Fang Jilai took the thing from Satsuki Momoi's hand without tears and wailed in pain. From now on, I will never go shopping with a girl again. Chapter 70 Dragon Kingdom Chess. Fang Jilai was standing on the side of the road, waiting for Satsuki Momoi. His eyes swept across a pharmacy, and Fang Jilai suddenly remembered something. I plan to wait until Satsuki Momoi comes back to buy it. Suddenly, Fang Jilai felt someone poked his shoulder, and Fang Jilai turned his head. When he turned around, he saw a rose appearing in front of him. Dang, 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 Alai, does it look good? Fang Jilai didn't react for a moment. He stayed in place and asked in disbelief, Xiao, Xia, is this for me? Satsuki Momoi nodded and raised the corners of his mouth sweetly. Yes, Alai, this is for you, because the first flowers most boys receive in their lives are at funerals, and I don't want Alai to be like this. After Satsuki Momoi finished speaking, he took the thing from Fang Jilai's hand. Fang Jilai wiped his hands and carefully took the rose. When he took the rose, Fang Jilai suddenly felt like he was in a dream. Fang Jilai pinched his thigh hard. Hey, it hurts. It's not a dream. After confirming that he was not dreaming, Fang Jilai smiled happily and said, Satsuki, thank you. I love it. Satsuki Momoi stood quietly next to Fang Jilai with a smile, without interrupting, just accompanying Fang Jilai to enjoy this beauty. Fang Jilai fell into happiness for a long time. It took a long time to recover. After recovering, Fang Jilai's smile did not diminish. Xiaoya, let's go see Xiaolu. I just want to give him something. Satsuki Momoi nodded and did not refute Fang Jilai's idea. Fang Jilai entered the pharmacy and asked, Boss. Boom, boom, boom. Click, huh? Jilai, Momoi, why are you here? Midorima Shintarō opened the door and asked doubtfully. Fang Jilai smiled slightly and said, Let me see how you're doing. Midorima Shintarō pushed up his glasses with his right hand, opened the door to the maximum, and invited, Come in. After Fang Jilai and Satsuki Momoi entered, Midorima Shintarō served them a pot of tea. Fang Jilai asked, Xiaolu, how do you feel now? Midorima Shintarō was stunned for a moment, but quickly recovered, stretched out his left hand and said, It's much better. I'll be able to compete after a few more days of rest. Jilai, you don't have to worry about my absence. Fang Jilai shook his head and retorted, I'm not worried about your absence. I'm just worried about your injury. As Fang Jilai spoke, he took out a pocket and took out something from it. I have a gift for you. I think it should be useful to you. You can always carry this thing with you when you're not playing games. It will protect your fingers. Midorima Shintarō was a little stunned. He didn't expect that Fang Jilai would come home to give him a gift and solemnly took it from his pocket. Out of courtesy, Midorima Shintarō did not open the pocket immediately. Fang Jilai smiled lightly and said, Let's take it apart and take a look. Are we still seeing each other? Midorima Shintarō nodded and opened his pocket. After opening the bag, Midorima Shintarō was slightly startled when he saw the bandage in the bag. He picked up the bandage and observed it. Fang Jilai explained from the side, This bandage you can wrap around your finger to protect your finger during rest time. Midorima Shintarō was flattered and immediately put on the bandage to check the effect. He found that it fit his finger very well and could prevent finger injury very well. Midorima Shintarō was very moved because Fang Jilai really put his heart into it. Midorima Shintarō stood up, bowed to Fang Jilai, and thanked him seriously. Jilai, thank you. Fang Jilai quickly stood up and helped Midorima Shintarō up. It's okay. We are all brothers. There's no need for this. Midorima Shintarō's pupils trembled slightly, and he muttered silently in his heart, Brother? After confirming that Midorima Shintarō was okay and sending out the gifts, Fang Jilai waved his hand, took Satsuki Momoi's hand, and walked out of the room. Xiaolu, let's go first. You have good rest. Midorima Shintarō nodded seriously and said, I will. Only then did Fang Jilai feel relieved and walked out with Satsuki Momoi. After taking Satsuki Momoi into a grocery store and buying a pair of Dragon Kingdom chess sets, Fang Jilai and Satsuki Momoi went straight to Akashi Shijiro's house. Sorry, 2 people. Outsiders are not allowed to enter here. The security guard at Akashi Shijiro's house stopped Fang Jilai and Satsuki Momoi. Fang Jilai said to the security guard, "We are here to see Akashi. Can I ask?" The security guard heard that he was here to see his young master, but he hesitated because he couldn't tell whether it was the truth or a lie. "Let them in." A middle-aged voice came out. After hearing this, the security guard did not dare to delay at all. He opened the door and let Jilai and Satsuki Momoi in. Fang Jilai stared at the middle-aged man and vaguely guessed his identity. The middle-aged man walked up to Fang Jilai and said with emotion, "Heir of the Fang family, do you have anything to do with Akashi?" Fang Jilai replied, "Uncle, I am your son's teammate. I am here to see how his injury is." The middle-aged man was stunned and asked doubtfully, "You know me?" Fang Jilai smiled faintly and explained, "Because you and Akashi are very similar, and based on the panicked actions of the security guard just now, it is not difficult to guess the identity of my uncle." The middle-aged man chuckled and praised. As expected of Fang Gaoshuan's son, he is indeed smart. Fang Jilai smiled politely and said, "Uncle, I'm going to find Akashi first." The middle-aged man nodded. "Go ahead. If you don't know the way, ask the housekeeper to take you there." Fang Jilai nodded and pulled Satsuki Momoi to follow the housekeeper's footsteps to Akashi Shijiro's room. After Fang Jilai and the two left, the middle-aged man returned to his cold face. "Shijiro, compared to others, you are still far behind. Ajing, are you surprised?" Fang Jilai looked at Akashi Shijiro with a wicked smile. Akashi Shijiro smiled softly. "It's quite unexpected. I didn't expect you two, Jilai and Momoi, to come to me." Fang Jilai smiled faintly and said, "Is your injury feeling better?" Akashi Shijiro twisted his wrist and said gently, "It's much better. Nothing is wrong anymore." Fang Jilai nodded with confidence and handed the Dragon Kingdom chess in his hand to Akashi Shijiro. "Nua, this is a gift for you. Chess from my motherland. This is a very good thing." Akashi Shijiro took the chess piece and said, "Oh, then I have to study hard." Chapter 71, nickname Fang Jilai, explained the basic gameplay of chess to Akashi Shijiro. And then, after Akashi Shijiro understood the rules, he played a few games of chess with Akashi Shijiro. After brutally torturing Akashi Shijiro for 3 rounds, Fang Jilai stood up, took Satsuki Momoi's hand, and said to Akashi Shijiro, "Ajung, it's very late. Let's go back first." Akashi Shijiro was still silent in the comparison of the previous game. He calmed down after hearing Fang Jilai's words. "Are you going back now? Don't you want to have a meal?" Fang Jilai smiled and shook his head. "No, Xiaoya and I have already chosen a restaurant." Akashi Shijiro didn't intend to disturb their date, so he stood up and sent Fang Jilai and Satsuki Momoi away. After Fang Jilai and Satsuki Momoi walked out of the door, they waved to Akashi Shijiro. "Ajing, let's go first." Akashi Shijiro nodded gently and watched the two people leave. After the two left, Akashi Shijiro turned around and prepared to return to the room to continue studying chess. "Shijiro." Akashi's father stopped Akashi Shijiro. Akashi Shijiro stopped and asked, "Father, what's the matter?" Akashi's father asked seriously, "I heard that you became the vice captain of the team?" Akashi Shijiro said calmly, "Yes, father." Akashi's father nodded. "That's good. You have to remember that everything our family is in charge of must strive for first place. If we're not first, then everything will be meaningless." Akashi Shijiro nodded coldly. "I understand, father." Akashi's father waved his hand. "Well, go ahead." Akashi Shijiro bent down. "Then I'll go back to the room first, father." After saying that, Akashi Shijiro walked to his room. After Fang Jilai and Satsuki Momoi finished eating and sent Satsuki Momoi home, Fang Jilai walked towards his home. "Dad, I'm back." Fang Jilai opened the door of his room and put down the things he bought. Father Fang walked over with a smile. "Xiao Lai is back. How is it?" Father Fang was stunned when he saw the large amount of things Fang Jilai had purchased and asked in surprise, "Why did you buy so many things?" "The little girl bought them for you." Fang Jilai rolled his eyes. "You still have a nerve to say that I only have 500 yuan in my bank card, and I still bought it with my own small coffers. However, Xiaoya did buy these things for me. I just gave them a skirt. Father Fang looked at a pile of things and said, tis twice. It's not cheap. Shoes, hats, gloves, clothes, and roses. Wait, roses? Father Fang raised his head in shock. The little girl gave you a rose? Fang Jilai nodded. Yes, Xiaoya said that the first time a man receives flowers in his life is at a funeral. She said she didn't want me to do the same. Father Fang was still shocked and asked, what's the little girl's name? Fang Jilai replied doubtfully, Satsuki Momoi. Father Fang nodded in approval, patted Fang Jilai on the shoulder and threatened, treat her well. If you let her down, my 7 wolves will be unblocked. Fang Jilai twitched the corner of his mouth. You don't need to tell me. I will definitely be good to her, but why are you reacting so strongly? Father Fang raised his head, looked out the window, and recalled the beautiful past. You know, your current experience is very similar to mine. Your mother also gave me a rose before and told me that—
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.